All right, so we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you everyone for coming this morning. This is the design charrette that is specifically for the panel members to really focus on visioning. I think everybody remembers Sal from Kimley Horn. We also have a couple other folks here helping out, Carl and Keith. Thank you. So if anybody has any questions about this whole process, let me know now, or I guess throughout this we can field a few questions. But this is going to be a working process. We're going to try to wrap up around 12:30, maybe a few minutes after that. We're getting a little bit of a late start. We've got a couple breaks in between. We also have some food over here if you're interested. So with that, I'll turn it over to Sal.
Thank you. Well, good morning.
Good morning.
So we're going to go pretty quick today. We've got several kind of short activities to just kind of get the juices flowing and talk about the area in terms of what it is today, what it could be tomorrow. The game plan here really is to get as much input from you today that helps inform the planning process as we start to go in and actually look at some land use planning concepts and develop those in concert with some transportation concepts as we will get Paul and his group involved as we get further along with the land use. So just sort of, the goals today are to capture those big themes and ideas regarding this study area, get your input and your local knowledge, identify community values as will be represented in this room in terms of what's important to you, what you value in this area in terms of what's there and what you'd like to see there. We want to get the elements together for a vision statement, and sometimes consultants will do that at the front end of the process. I'm going to do it at the end of the process today. And the reason is as we talk and we're generating ideas, there's certain elements we want to pull out. You may have an idea and we say, oh, that's a good element for a vision statement, and we'll capture it on the board here. And at the end, we'll pull together sort of the 3 or 4 key thoughts that we think should be folded into an ultimate vision statement. And again, we like to use that vision statement to go back and be our benchmark as we develop plans and make sure we're doing what we said we were going to do. So just logistically a little bit, again, feel free to get up as needed for food or restroom breaks. We have a couple of short breaks that we've got into the program. We're going to go through them, just some quick opening thoughts to kind of get the juices flowing. We'll do some facilitated activities, break, do some more activities, a small break, and then we'll have we'll have one at least group activity at your tables, which is why we're broken up the way we are this morning. And then we'll talk about where we go from there. So 4 hours is a pretty short window to do one of these things, so we're going to move pretty quickly. I am less concerned about hitting all of the little exercises we have as I am just having really good productive dialogue and getting the information we need. So if something looks like it's bogged down, then we'll move on to the next thing. If something looks like we're really excited about it, we'll just stay on that and we'll be flexible. So just to kind of start off here, opening thoughts. So the idea really here is let's not constrain ourselves, but we have to have a sense of realism about what we kind of throw into this plan. And the way I always explain this is, think in terms of not real estate development, but think in terms of community building. We tend to look outside our windows sometimes and say, how do we fix that or make it better? And that sometimes prevents us from looking a little bit further and saying, well, what if we do something really cool? What if we do something really special? What if we do something, different? We tend to look at the fires that are burning and how intense they are. Pittsburgh's turnaround happened when they lost 50% of their population. Chattanooga's turnaround happened when they got voted the most polluted city in America. So we tend to look out the window and we go, we're doing pretty well. Then sometimes we're not motivated to do the big thing. And so it's easy to say, well, let's fix that road, or let's add some trees, or add a sidewalk. But is there something more? Is there something bigger? Let's at least put that on the table and talk about it. So let's have a balance of realism. Let's not talk about 5 years. Let's talk about 50 years. Let's not talk about 10 years. Let's talk about 100 years. The interesting thing about this project is we're dealing with a lot of existing infrastructure. Some of it's fairly new in terms of development. And so, there's some challenging conversations about, what do you do with the form that you've already been handed, and how do we work around that, or do you want to do it? Is there another way to tackle it? So I mentioned the vision board. As we're talking, raise your hand if you say, that's a important enough statement that it belongs in our vision statement. We'll just capture those things as we go through the process, and then we'll come back and talk about those on the end. Okay, so talk a little bit about existing conditions and what we have today. We gave everyone weeks and weeks of homework. You don't have to raise your hand whether you did your homework or not. What I wanted to do is just capture thoughts from the background material in terms of, do you have anything that says, again, this is something we need to write down and make sure we address this as we talk today and as we move forward in land planning. Anything out of your comp plans or some of the articles that were recommended. How many of you read Rise of the Creative Class or any of Richard Florida's other books? So any thoughts in terms of what we know about the study area or other relevant issues that you think, this is important enough, we need to be thinking about that?
We've been planning a lot. It's time to do.
Okay.
And I'm not being glib. It's just that it's been 20 years of almost saying the same thing. Our principles are very much aligned with each other, be it the long-range transportation plan or neighborhood model or, Places 29. The principles are echoing each other.
Exactly. Okay, and that's a good comment. I went back, if you look at some of the previous studies that I've done, and this is a community that loves to study things, there's some pretty neat ideas, and some of them, I think are very relevant today. So I worked in a community one time. I did a concept plan. I went to the planning director. I said, what do you think of this? And he disappeared for 5 minutes. He came back and he had a stack of plans that went back to the 60s, this fall. I said, okay, maybe it's time to do something. So that's a good comment. If you look at some of your future land use plans, there's a lot of broad stroke areas that just say mixed use. And a lot of plans do that today, and it makes a lot of sense. We tend to kind of want to look at everything that way now. But then within that comment, that term, what does that really mean? What is the form of that mixed use is really important. There's vacant retail space, some of it in fairly new, shiny buildings within the study area. What does that mean? And we can talk a little bit about kind of the changing nature of retail. There's also over 100 acres of the surface parking.
Wow.
In this area.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So we look at that as opportunities, potential opportunity sites.
That seemed to be one of the key themes woven throughout the different plans for that area, is that let's move away from a land use style that's so focused specifically on the automobile and try to evolve into something that accommodates other transportation modes as well.
Yeah, great comment. And the truth is, this is an area of a fairly suburban, urban form. Even with some of the new development, it's still a fairly suburban form. It's not very tall. We have large surface parking. It's nice to see that there's some parking underneath the movie theater. But it's still a fairly suburban approach to development.
And I'm not saying we should exclude automobiles, but it's just
Sure.
the idea of encompassing a wider variety of transportation modes.
Absolutely. And again, think down the road. 20 years, 50 years. There's 100 autonomous Uber cars on the street in Pittsburgh today that are operating. And people keep saying, boys, it's 10 years out, 20 years out. And transportation people will tell you it could be 5 years out. This is real. How does that impact the way we look at development? The changing retail. The small shops are a real challenge in any development. Brand new developments are seeing vacant shops in a significant amount. Why is that? And should we just stop building that space? And if we don't build that space, what should that space be? So, if we build today a better version of what's out there right now, 5 years from now, it's going to be the wrong thing. All right, so this is a quick, Keith is going to write down as you talk. We're just going to go around the room, and this is sort of stream of consciousness. One word, So if you said, what is hydraulic today, and you had to describe it in one word, if you want to cheat and use two, that's okay. Let's just go around the room.
Cars.
Cars.
Let's say it's, what's the word? Like frozen,
Frozen.
like stuck in time.
Okay.
Dangerous.
Dangerous. And we know we can quantify that. You've had a couple pedestrian incidents.
Just saw the
Recently?
VDOT crash data and safety data, and dangerous.
So I come up with asphalt.
Asphalt. Is that one word?
It is.
Just making sure.
I'm just going to say auto-oriented and pavement, that's already been covered.
Okay.
Maybe mixed use.
Mixed use? Mixed use?
Mixed use.
Okay.
With a hyphen.
Two masters.
Two
Masters.
masters.
Oh, wow, that's deep.
Okay, we'll have you dig deeper into that one. We'll come back to that one.
Disjointed.
Disjointed? That's a good one.
So also conscious of the pedestrian, I'll say Frogger.
Frog. Yeah, I like where you have a little piece of sidewalk and truncated domes and it goes nowhere.
Yeah.
And it's like inviting someone to be really adventurous. Chuck?
If you'll allow 2 words, revenue producing.
Revenue producing, okay.
The border. Border. B-O-R-D-E-R. Border.
All right.
Not boredom.
No.
Okay. Now, border, in terms of beginning and end, gateway?
If you've got a border, you've got city and county is there. You've got a border of housing and commercial, residential. I think it's just a number. The sheer fact that it's an intersection is a
Right.
bordering on things, a bordering on use. For me, the 2 key ones are city, county, and then commercial, residential.
Okay.
Border.
Let's write that down too. That's good.
I think there's one other word that ought to be up there too. That's employment.
Okay, very good. Yeah. And, you know, in any redevelopment, sometimes you have to start there. You know, employment centers, employment destinations, and then look at the land uses related to that.
I think this goes with cars, but congested.
Congested. Two masters.
Yeah, first off, it's two TW. Might be good. But first off, it is a highway of state significance. So carrying traffic through it is, from the state perspective, a critical part of what's going on here. However, it's the word I almost used is gateway, because it's an obvious gateway and an obvious nodal core for both the city and the county.
Okay.
So it's trying to do two things at once.
Right.
I just want to add, there's no there there.
So no placemaking, no there there.
placemaking.
Okay.
Which contradicts in a way, even though we can sense that there could be a gateway, but it's ill-defined, nondescript.
Right.
It's aimless.
So in the time I've spent in Charlottesville the last few months, gateway has been the one term I think that it has been, we've had least agreement on what it means. So if you define it as you're not someplace, you move, and now you are someplace, I've left something and entered something, you know, is it really a gateway? Is it a destination? What are you entering and what are you leaving?
Yeah.
Becomes a big conversation. So the word gets used a lot, but I think it means different things to two different people. So one of the conversations we've had and will have and want to hear from you today is, you know, is this area unique enough or should it be unique enough that it is a destination of itself and that it feels different than anything around it? You know, It's not the lawn, it's not downtown, it's not out in certain parts of the county. You know, should it be different? Is it just geographically set up to be different from a land use transportation standpoint? Is this your, whatever name you want to give it, should it become something that is uniquely Albemarle or uniquely Charlottesville? It doesn't exist and maybe won't exist anywhere else just because of the nature of the density or whatever.
I just want to add that if you overlay to the same scale the downtown mall's system of blocks, it fits within the footprint of this study area, this core.
Which potentially would make it a walkable.
Right. I mean, just to give a
development.
sense of scale,
Yes.
how big
That's
this
a great,
is.
great point. So the whole, we'll talk about block structure and how important that is. Topography sometimes fights us on that, but how important it is for walkability and connectivity and those concepts. So that's a great point. Okay. Anything on that that
I
surprised
think you
you?
should add the word destination up there.
Okay,
I think that's
destination.
important.
Right. And we're going to talk about that some more. That's a good
With a
one.
question mark.
Okay. So the next board thing we'll talk about is, it's not all bad, you know, we maybe want to improve it, want to change it, enhance it, but what works today that you would say, you know what, if we could keep that or do more of that, what out there today on the ground would you say works?
Visibility, it's a visible, you know.
Okay,
draw
got good
traffic.
visibility, which is great from a retail perspective. And
I think it has some good east-west green edges, I'll call them. I like how it blends into the neighborhood on the west,
Right.
and I like how it
Right.
kind of has the creek and the green, kind
Okay.
of greenway on the east.
The challenge is those are all happening on the perimeter of the area, very little within.
Yeah, bring them in somehow.
Okay.
It already has affordable housing.
Okay, affordable housing exists. Is it in the right location?
Right, that's, all these other things are another debate.
Right.
It is in there.
It has strong businesses.
Okay. Other things that work?
I think with the advent of Hillsdale, you've got access.
Okay, good access. Is that more of a northwest or north-south versus east-west? Or just general, you think?
Well, it's north-south for sure, but it's east-west also when you consider Hillsdale going all the way up to Raleigh, would give people an opportunity to get into that area without having to get on 29.
The things that work?
It does provide employment, like Trey
Mhm.
said. It has a grocery store.
Yeah.
Services would also be another
Good services.
item over there.
So, yeah, within the area, there's a good range of employment services, goods and services, some entertainment, you know, the types of things you would have in a destination area. Okay, we can add to that if you think of something later, once we leave it, okay? So the next thing we'll talk about is opportunity for change, and this is something we really need your input from a local standpoint. So I may view certain things, like I view large surface parking lots as an opportunity to change. This conversation has nothing to do with ownership or property lines. You know, Jim is ready to sell or Jim will never sell. This is just, when you do development or redevelopment, you know, you have to look at sort of what's most acceptable to change. And there are certain things within study area you say, that's there, we got to work around it no matter what. There's other things, and they might be big things, that say, you know what, it has a big footprint, but, you know, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, you know, it potentially could change. So that's the idea behind this conversation. We tend to think of sometimes it's rental property, sometimes large parking lots. sometimes it's vacant buildings, sometimes it's just an underutilized, piece of property. We have developed areas all over the country where there's something on a piece of property, it's a revenue stream for somebody, they may be an absentee owner, but they get a check every month, they're not motivated to do anything. But you look at those and say, if we could change anything, those are maybe more susceptible to change than something else. And so, what are those kind of things you think in your mind in this area?
I think that the relatively low, small-scale, low-story building landscape is an opportunity for change. It presents an ability to be taller if the market.
Some more vertical
Right.
mixed use.
I think so, especially with some of the topography on the south end.
Okay.
Chuck mentioned this one in the fire category, but I think just building Hillsdale Drive through there presents a number of opportunities in terms of reorienting buildings away from 29 towards Hillsdale.
Okay.
I think it provides an opportunity to break some of this larger block up.
Okay.
Hillsdale should be seen as a big opportunity.
It's an opportunity to make it bike and pedestrian friendly, as well as moving cars at the same time. I mean,
Right.
and this is an opportunity to provide much better transit for the area.
Good.
Also, it seems like the right-of-way is a big right-of-way. It's hard to envision incorporating both sides of hydraulic road. It's just so wide.
It's a bit of a barrier, just by virtue of the width.
Yeah, exactly, right.
That's a challenge.
Mhm.
Slow hydraulic down enough so that it could become a pedestrian area. An opportunity for change is like insert a walkable block network.
So it gets to the walkable,
Yeah.
pedestrian, and traffic.
Right, and that does,
Right.
that can evolve, it doesn't have to build out right away, but if you put the block network in place.
And if that means demolition in order to make some of those things happen long-term,
Yeah,
right,
right.
that's sort of the conversation. Are there any specific properties you say that represents an opportunity to change within the development area? So, for example, there's some very large
That would help if
footprints.
we had data.
Yeah.
So, extremely large footprints on both sides of 29, existing, viable, productive businesses. Any opportunity to change those because they have a huge impact on potential block structure.
The Kmart site.
Kmart's being redeveloped. We have a copy of that plan, so that's a good example. That's a real good example of one that's happening
Or
already.
even the one south of that, with the grocery store.
Yes.
Kroger site.
And it
Right.
seems like the Whole Foods is a good thing to keep because it's pretty new.
Okay.
And it also is an anchor.
Yes. And my wife would cry if he got rid of
Yeah,
it. So.
and so, so you're asking which can change? I would need to see which buildings are more specialized for the use they have today
Mm-hmm.
versus those that are more speculative in nature and more fluid.
Mm-hmm.
And also looking at the lifespan of the construction itself. I mean, I think some of those are really cheap buildings.
Right.
They're not worthy of reinvestment.
So one thing we'll talk about more, again, when you look at large footprints that exist out there, they're going to have a big impact on your ability to create some of the things you're talking about. Well, if you think you're not going to walk in there tomorrow, so you mind, selling your property or let's tear down your building and do something else. But 50 or 25 years from now, 50 years from now, is that a logical conversation? In order to, again, achieve the end vision. It's either that or you say these are left alone and we work around them, which, potentially compromise some of the other goals you have.
Right.
I think if you're going to look really long-term, you look at the Sperry property and you look at Stonefield. Stonefield was designed such that when Sperry, if it ever went away, and that's 700 jobs, so we don't want it to go anywhere right now, unless it goes locally, but that certainly can tie in. And the main entrance into Stonefield would then shift to Seminole Court. There are some opportunities in the north wing of Seminole Square that could be redeveloped in the future, but that's going to be dependent on the regulatory environment, frankly.
Okay, that's a good point.
Also, is that-
There are leases in place, but those don't go forever like the ones on the main portion of the center. So that is a possibility for some vertical construction, again, subject to regulatory environment.
Okay.
Along that line, I just note that Stonefield is already zoned for vertical mixed use.
Okay.
Oh, good. Yeah.
But keep in mind, the reason it's not vertical is that there was not a market for it.
Right.
Opportunity, didn't say it was real.
That's right.
So I think the opportunity for more residential.
Yeah, I think that's it. Some kind of mix between the
Yeah,
jobs and the
not just
residential,
jobs
have
and
fewer
commercial,
communities.
more residential.
Okay, that's a good comment. Other specific opportunities?
I think one is the post office site.
Okay.
Right now, it prevents connectivity through a more passive use into the nearby neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
If it were a different use.
Right.
And I'd like to throw out there more opportunities for real public space.
Yep. Okay, good one.
Green space.
Plazas,
Opportunity
Yeah.
for
parks.
more corporate park,
Yeah.
Corporate park?
corporate offices.
Okay.
I just want to make sure, my notion of a park is more like a public park, not a corporate park.
Right, exactly. Yes. And we'll talk about that in terms of trends. It's interesting that we're kind of, as you move to these mixed-use developments, we're moving less towards, boy, I want that 100-acre park that I can drive to on a weekend, towards the more smaller urban scale parks that I could walk to and go to on a daily basis. Okay, again, if you have more thoughts after we leave it, we can come back and add. So we've touched on some of this already, a little bit about kind of relevant trends. So as we talk about land planning, what the area could be, let's again think about maybe things that we don't see when we look out the window right now. So some of the things that we're seeing, and you're seeing this in your communities, you know a lot of this already, but we tend to maybe gloss over it sometimes in terms of doing something intentional. So whenever we look at a project like this, I always say, well, let's look at these kinds of things. We know the employer destinations, so it's a good employment center today, but we know the employers are looking to locate in different areas. So I came from North Carolina where the Research Triangle Park was the biggest thing for decades and decades, and now it doesn't work.
Yeah.
It doesn't work because nobody wants to locate there because the employees don't want to live and work in that environment. So I just did a new headquarters for Citrix in downtown Raleigh in an old warehouse. They did a national search, and that's where they landed because the employees wanted to ride skateboards to work. They don't want automobiles. And then that generated new housing downtown, and that whole area around where they started, nothing else was happening, is all redeveloping. So we know that's kind of the environment we're dealing with right now, and you can't even get the employers to come talk to you without having that conversation. You have to have the type of housing, it has to be proximity, you have to have transit and walkable communities. These are all becoming just sort of things we talk about every day now, but they become real when you look at this type of study area. If you don't do it, there's certain kinds of employees that will not show up at your door. Mixed use, mixed income, you said we've already got some affordable housing in the area. That ties in with the next dot of aging and community. So I've worked with APA a little bit on their paper, which is a good one to read. The millennials and the seniors are tending to ask for the same things right now.
Right.
And rather than to be warehoused somewhere, everyone wants to kind of be in an area where you can be around people and they can walk to the parks and go places where you can just sit and watch people, which is a great activity. So some of the things that we look in communities for our seniors are the same things that we're looking at for the corporate relocators and what they want out of a place. We know rental demand, housing demand is going up. There's tons of housing in this area. But again, is there enough connectivity and is it in the right location? And so it tends to all be around the perimeter. You're starting to get a little bit within the core area, probably need more of that. But, you know.
I guess the question is it placed to facilitate good transit? And that's the
Right.
question.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's very diffused.
Yes. It's diffused and disconnected, and again, at the end of the day, everything is market-driven, so we can talk about this all we want, but it all is market-driven at the end of the day. So a lot of planners are drawing pretty pictures.
You are the first participant to join the conference.
Specific worksheet they use on where they put a grocery store and where the retail goes and what kind of retail it is. There's very specific models about determining, with few exceptions of developers getting to be really big risk takers. They're not in the business of really doing that. So you got to do something at the end of the day that is a market-driven plan.
Sal, I think one thing that you said is really important, and that is the market today, the millennials and the seniors really are converging. There's no question about that. And they want to live, the millennials want to live within walking distance of where they work.
Right.
The seniors want to live within walking distance of entertainment, restaurants, and they like security also. And
security is a good one.
That's at least from our perspective, that's the driver going forward.
Okay. No, that's perfect. I'm always amazed when you go into the big cities, the big dangerous cities, and you see all the seniors and the elderlies that live and they walk around all day, and you go, well, how does that work? Well, it's because all this stuff is there, and typically the transit is good. So they have connectivity, accessibility, and the people watching is great. And we know from a safety perspective,
exactly. More people,
more eyes on the street, the safer condition.
And I think the other thing that goes with that, with respect to employers, and we're seeing this locally, particularly the high-tech employers, they do want to locate near where there's a lot going on,
yes,
where their employees can work. Durham is a prime example. We've got a very, very attractive local business that could not fill its need in Charlottesville and has opened up a shop in Durham.
Right.
We've got another one that employs 400 people here in town. They can't find enough local people who can live and walk to their place without having to get in the cars because they have limited parking. So they have opened up a place in Innisbrook in Richmond. So we are exporting jobs at this point, which is a challenge for us.
And it's neat. We're in a situation where we're trying to do infill development. I'll go back to the RTP example. I mean, they've got a whole new plan now for how to redevelop it. If you think about it, everybody sits on a massive piece of land and there's a building in the middle.
Yep.
Now you got to go figure out how to either take property away from people or get them to densify the property they own to create the environment we're trying to create. My daughter worked at a pharmaceutical company out there and just hated it. She had to bring a brown bag lunch, and you had to sit in the office all day, and there was just nowhere to go. You went in the morning, you left at the end of the day. That's not what people are looking for.
Well, you mentioned earlier that there's 100 acres of asphalt, and when you look at the downtown mall again, that block size is average about 2 acres a block.
Right.
Just again, give you some scale about what we're talking about. We have lots of land. It's just under asphalt.
Downtown Charlotte at one point was 50% of it was paved surface parking, maybe 15 years ago. So it's pretty incredible.
One thing you look at apartments being built in the city, primarily like on Main Street, and 5 years ago you would have never dreamed that they could afford to put subterranean parking. Mm-hmm. It's well done. I also think Stonefield is actually a nice project. And if somebody describes Charlottesville in terms of its core, you would always send them downtown. We do have a center. Europeans have learned that. And Stonefield a bit reflects a little bit of that. Mm-hmm. Although they're one-story buildings, it surprises me that they've done that.
Right.
I guess there's no reason that they couldn't go higher in the future.
Well, and it goes back to the market. I mean, the market was there to do it. But I enjoy the movie theater at Stonefield from an architectural standpoint because it has some massing, has some height.
Yeah.
But actually, I like that it breaks up that a little bit.
And some subterranean parking, structured parking.
So, most of those buildings typically are not constructed so that you can just vertically, expand them either. So that's always a challenge if you say, well, could we add housing on top of this or that? But I agree. I mean, it'd be nice if there were a way to get more height in that development.
And I do think this is bringing up too, that the need for public-private partnerships to provide municipal parking.
Yes. And that's a huge issue in our downtown areas, and I think out here, and many, many communities are finding ways to solve that problem, and it usually is a 3P solution. Other things I think that you can be very intentional about. So you can say, okay, the study area is what it is today, but moving forward, should it be all about or have a fundamental underlying basis of good technology? It's highly wired. We want Google Fiber in there. We want Wi-Fi hotspots in our trash cans. We want we have solar powered trash compactors now. This thing is a solar powered charging station, which is actually a place where students come together. This is in Texas. You can cook technology in the same way you can cook sustainable practices in. So should we have green streets? Should we be using, and these are things that aren't necessarily more expensive if you're thinking about them ahead of the game. But what I always tell communities is you can be intentional, and this is going to get into a branding conversation about, again, don't look out the window and say, what do we have? But the next time we build a street, or the next time we build a park, or the next time we put in site furnishings, what if our message is we're really going green? That, I think, is an intentional move you have to make, a statement you make and say, okay, it's important enough to us, we're going to cook that into everything. Asheville does a great job of saying we're going to cook art into everything we do. Right. So you walk and the sidewalk's got art in it, and when they have to put up a code-required barrier for the drinking area next to a bar, they have an artist design it as opposed to just putting a railing up. Everything has an artist touch to it. And
that's kind of nice.
Cool. That would be so cool.
And Nashville has music piped out of the streetlights. Every corner you hear music because they're about music. So there are ways to intentionally, bake these things into your planning and design to say this is what we're about. This is what the county, Charlottesville, or this general region is about, and that's what we're going to push.
I think one of those smaller things, but still something to incorporate into design, and a lot of this already begins to, that in the short time I've lived here, is dogs and dog friendly.
Yes.
Yes. That's true.
A lot of businesses are doing it on their own, but making sure that there are facilities and amenities. And that gets back to the millennials and the older.
So this is a real quick story, but it goes back to Chuck's comments and that comment. So the Navy Yard in Philadelphia is redeveloping, and the main tenant, initial tenant, was Urban Outfitters. They've done their corporate campus there. And if you go there, there's just a bunch of very young, attractive people walking somewhat attractive dogs. And when you talk to what happened there was Urban Outfitters had a multi-gazillion-dollar deal to go in a tower in downtown Philadelphia. And in the last phone call before they signed the paper, the CEO of Urban Outfitters said, "We just want to make sure this is a dog-friendly building." And the tenants and the owner said, "No, you can't bring your dogs into this downtown, fancy tower we have here." He says, "Okay, we're out." And as they walked out of the room, the real estate guy had been doing the deal, had a heart attack, and said, "I'll sell you buildings over in the Navy Yard. We're trying to redevelop that area. It's 1,000 acres. You can have all the buildings you want for $1 a piece. And you just have to invest a certain amount of money." They worked out that deal. So then now they have multiple buildings there that are unbelievable. It's this amazing campus. It's initiated, catalyzed that whole redevelopment there. It was all about dogs. The whole deal happened because of the dogs. But it gets back to who their employees are and who they're trying to attract and who they're trying to keep. And now you've got this huge area of a major city redeveloping because of dogs.
And I want to add, it's related to the idea of those that we love, okay? And I heard once, it's very profound to me, that a city without children is like a forest without songbirds. Even though we know the markets are millennials and seniors, those millennials meet and they get married and they have babies. And so I would like us to think about, could there be good early childhood development centers here, great daycare? This is going to be not just kind of diverse from an economic standpoint, but in terms of age. So I would just like to make sure that we're also child-friendly, and we're certainly going to be dog-friendly.
And that means facilities, and it also means, back to the bike and pet issue, and safe ways for children to.
So increasingly, if they've got a great park, and they've got great destinations to go to, and the parents feel safe by putting their child in the daycare in their neighborhood, families are going more urban than suburban.
If you ever travel through a big city, you always stop. It's interesting, you can be in New York and you always stop when you're your children. And they may be playing on a piece of asphalt that's got a 6-foot wire, a 6-foot chain link fence around it. And you always stop because it seems out of character. And they're running around, they may have their little, uniforms on, but it always makes you pause because it just feels like it's out there.
I think making the bigger neighborhood transitional. One of the things when I was in Baton Rouge that was a major urban problem were the neighborhoods where the minute families or young people could move out of a neighborhood to get to the schools or to get to something else, they left that community behind. If this could be a neighborhood where the millennials come in single, meet the other millennials, create whatever the new millennials will be in the future, and move up to different housing, but never move out of the community, the neighborhood, would create a sustainable
downtown
neighborhood.
Charlottesville. Just go off a high street, and you can see in one block you've got a small apartment building, you've got a large lot single-family home, and then you've got a small lot single-family home. So lot size matters, and building type matters. The whole thing about missing middle housing is important. Getting that small apartment building back, getting more towns, and
getting granny flats
and multiplexes.
Out of Bounds is a project built at Georgetown, and it's a brand new one in Barracks Road. And 56 units, it's essentially all sold out. It's not even built yet. And the entire market is people over 55 selling their house in the country and wanting to move in close. And also, another statistic I heard, 75% of the people who move to the Charlottesville area are over 55.
Wow. That's a big trend.
It is. That's an accurate.
So, and if you read the APA document on aging community, it has a huge direct impact on housing product type. So, and that goes to your codes as well. So, are you going to allow the 2 living units on one parcel? The granny flats. Are you going to allow there's cohabitation? Chapel Hill does a lot of this, where there's up to, and there's a limit. It's kind of like chickens. There's up to 8 seniors that can live together in a home, and they've reworked the codes to allow this. And so there's an interesting structure for how they do that now, so that seniors, some are couples and some are single, widowed, or widowers, and they're all cohabitating together now.
Like a dorm.
So which is a little scary, what those seniors are doing living together on Saturday night. But so I mean, again, just relook at the structure based on the way we want to live today.
Right.
And then you have all this housing in this area, but most of it's on the perimeter. So now it's about the transitions and the connectivity to get to the places. I think there's also a conversation about the small neighborhood corner that doesn't quite exist in this area. In the Raleigh market, some of the most high-end real estate, some of the most expensive homes, and the most desirable areas to live are around these little neighborhoods that may have a small grocery-anchored center with a few shops and some really nice restaurants that the owners in these multi-million-dollar homes can walk to, because they don't want to go out to the big centers and they don't want to get in their cars. So sometimes when you have large residential areas, it's not just getting them to, the Stonefield area. It's maybe finding a place for a small neighborhood corner, neighborhood commercial place that, again, in downtown Charlottesville, you have, a lot of those types of businesses. It would be nice if you could embed it into a residential area like that.
But you're bringing up the need, though, to preserve affordability.
Yes. Yeah, it needs to be across all income levels, and yes. Okay. So that was good. So those are some of the high-level trends. I'll stop on this one for a minute, local. So the other thing that really makes an area unique is the localness of it. That means getting your local businesses. So downtown, you have local. You know, some are just one-off local that are unique, and they're huge destinations. Stonefield's a little different. It's built around more national brands. And so the old adage that, you know, Main Street is local is really, you know, important. Again, if you want to create an identity, there are places where Short Pump, West Broad Street, Short Pump in Richmond Community Development. It's a really good mixed-use development. The residential works great. The outparcels work great. The retail's dead. Doesn't work at all. And again, it's this changing idea about retail. So the same developer is going further west and doing a new mixed-use development, and they are now pulling one-off local businesses that are very popular in the Fan District in Richmond, and they're pulling them all the way out to the west side to get them to come out there. Because those are destination retails. You know, I'm not going to drive out that far to get me a yogurt that I can get anywhere else, but I might go out there to get that one restaurant that I love, you know, in downtown. So this is the idea of clustering and clustering local businesses. So, you know, the county and the city here have just, you know, paper reams and reams of places that are unique and people talk about. When my wife came to work at the hospital here, they gave her 2 pages of restaurants for the area. And we're just trying to go down and, you know, check them off. And so you have those types of destinations and brands that people know that, you know, are very different than putting national retailers.
Right. Absolutely. That
So-
resonates with our people.
So clustering is big. Asheville they've clustered in some places artist studios, artist, you know, living arrangements. So now it becomes, well, if I want art, I go there because it's all clustered together. I don't have to travel in 10 different places. So the idea of local and clustering is really important, and this part of Virginia has its own unique, you know, style and brand that you could certainly pull that off, and it could change the dynamic of even this study area, the retail areas in here, to go more local. We've seen it with craft breweries. You know, you throw 10 craft breweries in one area, and all of a sudden it's, you know, it's a boom town.
Well, with Stonefield, we would like to mass more local retailers, but it's not easy to pull off. And
Right.
the ones that are there struggle because it's hard for people to get there.
Right. So go back to the whole, it's market driven. Either it works or it doesn't work. And now, you know, we don't know if the one in Richmond will work. I'm going to try and pull it off, but they found out that in this mixed-use development where you can't find housing, I mean, it's hard to find a house for sale, and they range from attached and some single-family and some really expensive condos. The retail space is like 75% vacant because all the retailers are already out on the main line, Broad Street, and you're not going to go back into those sort of hidden dark spaces underneath residential. But the residential is doing great.
Well, this also means instead of kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul, we're committed to growing more entrepreneurs. I mean, we've got
Right.
the Shossel Investment Collaborative. There's no reason why we can't be growing more local restaurants and businesses. We just opened up again in the Jefferson School a Caribbean/Vietnamese restaurant. Our refugee community and our immigrant community is growing. These are opportunities to cultivate more entrepreneurs that create that local vibe.
Right. I was going to talk later about it, but it reminds me, you know who Phil Romano is, of the Macaroni Grill guy?
Oh, yeah.
So Phil Romano is amazing. He lives out in Dallas, and spent some time with him recently, and I didn't realize he's developed like over hundreds of restaurant concepts that have come from his head that have turned into, you know, really productive types of chains. But in Dallas, he's doing an incubator. He took an area of Dallas that was very bad. I mean, it was as rundown, decrepit, and drug-infested as you could think. And he bought it all up with a couple partners, and he started an incubator program related to food service and restaurants. And now just anybody would come into him. He was the selective recruiter. And if you came to him with an idea and it had a good business model, he would set you up in a space and help you make it work. And some really neat restaurant products actually have come out of that program. But it redeveloped the entire area. It was a dead area. They rehabbed some industrial buildings, and now it's a destination a little bit outside of Dallas. But people go there now because it's a cool place to be. Millennials hang out there, seniors hang out there. I mean, it's very, very unique even within Dallas. And it came from the idea of that incubator food service. So there's examples like that all over the country of folks doing that. It's used as a catalyst to turn an area around. And that's really the point of the conversation, is from a land use standpoint, it's taking an area and making it vital by rethinking, about the way it's done. Now, that obviously comes out of an individual or group of individuals that have an idea. And so you need those individuals. You've got those, in spades all over. In this part of the world, you've got creative people and talented people, incubator-minded people. So, again, it's being intentional about it and going, okay. From a developer standpoint, you look at development and say, okay, what can we do different? What you have to change with the times. Sometimes you're adjusting. The folks at West Broad Village are trying to figure out what to do with all that retail space, and they still haven't figured it out yet. But again, you can't overcome the market. The market is what it is, and as much as we want to draw pretty pictures, you got to live with what the developers are able to do. They're only able to attract certain types of tenants in certain locations. Tenants all have requirements about what other tenants they need to be with or not be with. I mean, the list of how developers go through and pull a deal together is, it's pretty challenging. So the wish list itself isn't enough to make these things, happen.
So you're saying you have to be adaptable?
Yeah.
Absolutely. And when you build a stone field, 5 years, 10 years later, you may have to rethink and adjust to what's going on. It's just the nature of the game.
Sal, let me pick up on a point that Mark Graham made a few minutes ago, the challenge for this area. And that is that 29 today serves both as our main commercial boulevard and as a major through road for VDOT. And there's some conflicts there. And VDOT's primary interest is moving traffic north-south as quickly as it can. And that's going to take precedent over sort of anything that is done. But I think as we look at this thing, if we're looking 20 to 30 to 40, 50 years down the road, which we should, we maybe ought to keep in mind the fact that one day we might have a bypass. It might be an eastern bypass. But once we have that bypass, then 29 provides all kinds of opportunities with extra asphalt that can be turned into median strips, could be turned into transit lanes, bike lanes, and it really could become a commercial boulevard. This is a little tangential right now, but I do think as we consider the alternatives for this node, that we think that one of these days 29 may revert to our main commercial boulevard as opposed to a high-speed north-south corridor.
Great point. Other thoughts? Are there local trends that you may be aware of that we're not aware of that you think could have influence on?
Well,
on
I'm not going to just say, but the idea of local branding, the built form matters a lot to Charlottesville anyway, and having corporate architecture that could be anywhere doesn't resonate with anyone. So we're talking about the buildings themselves, but avoiding the style question, but how can it be fresh and of the right form to facilitate walking, but feels like it's Charlottesville Outlaw? That's a big challenge.
I think to that point, recently in the city, we've dealt with a series of large footprint, block-sized buildings that have been considered out of character for our core community. They may be in character for the future of this area, I'm not sure. But to Kathy's point on block size, I think there's a combination of block size and building footprint fabric, if you want to call it that, that allows, I think, for some more incremental growth in some of the smaller business model to kind of grow organically versus, 85,000 square feet at a time, boom, 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 boom.
With an outside developer from Atlanta.
Right,
So
exactly.
There's somewhere in between the two. Not to say that those block-sized buildings are appropriate at certain anchor points. But.
Okay.
We'd keep
I mean, there's definitely a mixed-use form in architecture, and there's some firms that work in different cities, and you can tell they're working immediately. So even then, you start to get a style and a form that starts to become repetitive. And not that they don't work, and not that it's not good architecture, it's just that, you know, you have to make that decision
Right.
locally. Is this us? There's a street in Denver that, where the library is one of the most beautiful streets I've ever seen, but the architecture is extremely contemporary. But it's so stunning when you go there, you just stop, and everybody just stands in those streets and takes pictures, because the buildings are so different and unique in the style.
What street is that?
You know, I don't know the street name, but it's where the library is. I'll send that to you.
Which city is this?
In Denver. It's phenomenal. They always have public art out there. But it's so different. Now, you'd have to think, is that right for our community? And you know, sometimes you need some of that, but you don't want the whole place to look like that. But it's pretty dramatic.
I think it's interesting, excuse me, if you look at the aerial photos of downtown Charlottesville, now the roofing material has gone TPO and they're using white. You can, and that's a recent trend, you can actually look at recent aerial photos of Charlottesville and see these colossal white rooftops. And they actually contrast with the older, darker, smaller footprint buildings, and it's stark. It almost seems like, you know, the building block size has changed, but the blocks structure downtown hasn't changed. It's just the buildings themselves have gotten kind of enlarged. It's an interesting graphic. You can see it here too.
I think another, before we move on, another important attribute of this community is just a love for the outdoors. It ties into activity, it ties into pedestrian orientation. But I mean, I think there are also opportunities there to link whatever happens from an intersection with Meadow Creek and some trails along there. The more this community, if you look at our most vibrant commercial area, it's an outdoor pedestrian mall for the most part. So I think we should look for opportunities to allow people to really fulfill that.
The natural systems around it.
I just want to add, in addition to what was just said a few minutes ago, it's important that you guys reference our bike and
Yes.
because it's got some provisions related to
Exactly. Yeah, we've looked at that. We'll have some diagrams that document where the proposed systems are and the high priority links. But you know, overall, bike ped and green infrastructure is just sort of missing, disconnected within this whole area, and it just needs to all kind of come together.
Is it true that our CHS and Albemarle High School are probably equidistant from, I haven't looked at a map, but are those two major high schools, our only high school and your largest high school?
Right.
Are they equidistant in this location?
It's an interesting thought. They may very well be.
Because
our seniors drive cars.
That would make sense.
We'll give them a place to go.
Interesting, yeah.
That is a good point.
Yeah.
And we're also seeing
bikes, it's even better.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, we're seeing in mixed-use developments now more education being more embedded, whether university comes in or whether it's community college, embedding those functions in the middle of our mixed-use developments now.
The local trend, I would say, is the local housing demand. I mean, it's not just the national stuff you're talking about, but the demand is here. I mean, I don't know how many story after story I hear of somebody who's had a house on the market for a day, 2 days,
it's crazy.
No days before it sells.
And the cost is skyrocketing.
So the timing for actually doing something could be right now.
Right, satisfy some of that demand here.
Well, and it would deflate the housing inflation. I mean, the cost of housing, there is none available for the workforce. We had a RCLCO housing study done, which might be interesting to look at.
For that middle.
That $250,000 home is just not there. And that means that our teachers and police and fire and government workers and everyone that's a support and junior faculty at UVA cannot afford to live here.
So the whole live, work, play thing is interesting because a lot of mixed-use developments we see that incorporates the multifamily and the idea that, you could live there and work there. Well, generally the workforce that wants to work in the goods and services there can't afford the housing that's there. So they're still finding transportation to get to the workplace because they can't afford to live in multifamily.
That
units.
location would be great for faculty and staff to get on a great, fast bus to UVA. I mean, or multi-use trail, but ride bikes, and it's not a big distance from UVA to be there.
Other thoughts? Trends? Okay. That was good.
About 25 minutes.
Ahead of time. All right, so this is another quick lightning round. One word. We did what is it today? And let's put the, okay, so that board is up, what it is today. So now we're going to do what it is tomorrow. And I expect that these words come out of a lot of the conversation we've had. So let's go around the room again. One word for tomorrow.
People.
People.
Adventure.
Accessible.
I think destination should be on this list.
Okay.
Say active or healthy.
Just in terms of branding and theming, livable communities, healthy communities, that's another way to go and say, okay, we're going to look at future development in terms of activity level and the health. CDC has a landscape architect I used to work with who was the head of their entire program for this, they don't call it Healthy Communities Initiative, but it's essentially what it is. She works all around the country working with communities. If you ever want to do some really neat reading, go into the CDC and look at that program. It's really, really very interesting.
Recreation.
Recreation?
Desirable.
Better. Better.
Safer.
Density.
Meaning more dense.
More dense, yeah.
Movement.
As in mobility?
Mobility, people, traffic, dogs.
Children.
Children.
Well, mobility.
I'm a one-trick pony, jobs.
Well, you gotta have them.
It's okay.
Everything flows from jobs.
Yeah, what's true. Anything missing on that list?
How about, I want to see sustainable, equitable,
Green.
beautiful,
I was thinking the same thing, sort of green,
Okay.
sustainability.
sustainable, and equitable. We're all dancing around it, but it should be beautiful. We,
So what is your sensitivity to the green issue? Like, how green would you go? Would you be Chicago and mandate all new buildings have a green roof? Or is that too far? Is it some other benchmark for how buildings perform? If you say, let's make this green and sustainable, what normally happens in rural development, we talk about that day one, and then there kind of is, it doesn't follow through. And again, there's market issues related to that. But so I'd like to get a sense of, how green are you willing to go and push, which means how green are you willing to make codes specific to this area, and what are you willing to make developers do?
I think stormwater, we've got Meadow Creek that flows nearby, and it's impaired water due to all the development around there. I think stormwater could really be a guiding principle for
Okay.
the green
So
development.
low impact development kind of
Yeah,
stuff?
and incorporate those features. I mean, they
Right.
allow you to do a lot of these green features on streets that
Mhm.
provide appeal, provide shade with
Yeah,
street trees,
sidewalk
things
green
like that.
Right.
And it really overlaps a lot of what we're talking about here.
Okay. I mean, there are communities that are doing solar panel shade structures over all the
Yeah.
surface parking. So if you got to have surface parking, take advantage of it.
well, we the city and county are already working together on a Soul Smart designation, where we're already looking into
Right.
how our zoning can be changed to incorporate, more energy efficient requirements.
So the thing to keep in mind is this idea of being intentional. So either you are intentional about saying, this is our opportunity
Right.
to demonstrate how we do it, or you just kind of let it happen organically the way it does.
I just want to throw out there, I think being multimodal is being sustainable.
Yeah, absolutely. It ties back into what you were talking about with branding as well.
Yes.
The community, both the city and the county, pride themselves on their green credentials, and to be able to say, not one drop of stormwater runs off of this area into Impaired Meadow Creek, I think is something that
Okay.
people could really gather around and be proud of.
Okay.
Good. It would be ironic, but super interesting with Dominion smack dab in the middle of the place to sell them power back.
That's a great idea.
That would be, that'd be
Once you go
wonderful.
in our big
They're not going
outbuilding.
anywhere, it's the substation, just a big outlet.
No, that's a great idea. Charlottesville University has one of the most preeminent green people in the world, international reputation, Professor Tim Beatley. I think it's still here.
Yes, he is.
We met with him years ago on a large project where it was reportedly going to be one of the greenest in the world, never quite came off, but he's in your backyard.
Well, and I think just the same way of being intentional about being sustainable, I think we need to be intentional about being equitable, and that means how far are we willing to go with incenting and requiring affordable housing as a percentage of the units built. Now, you can get bonuses, height bonuses for providing affordable housing, but we have got to get really serious about that, because we're in danger of really becoming an exclusive community right now.
Right.
So this is an opportunity to right that ship and actually start laying the foundation correctly so that it gets built, not we just get money and put in a housing fund.
Right. Other things missing from that board?
Let me talk about maybe 25,000 feet down on this. As an organization that grew up in the rural environment with single-story buildings and lots of green space, and is now, primarily because of the transition of management to the millennials, becoming more interested in urban environment. The urban development is considerably more expensive than operating in a rural area, and there needs to be a recognition of that from a regulatory standpoint. But I think our next generation of leaders is more interested in things like green roofs, more interested in things like solar energy, so that if you're going to come up with some sort of a footprint that wants to take the next step into being more green and to address affordable housing as an issue. Workforce housing is something that maybe can be handled. Again, the regulatory environment has got to be, it's got to promote that, whether it's higher density, whether it's a quicker process, whether it's taller buildings, whatever it is. You just, all those things have to meld together. I think, and I don't think we're unique in that respect. I think that most people realize that, at least in a Charlottesville type market, that from a marketing perspective, green sells. There ain't any question about it, particularly from a living perspective.
Right.
So I think we need to keep that in mind as we try to come up with ways to lay out a footprint for this area.
That's a good point. And Chuck, I'd like to capture that in terms of the regulatory side, because we tend to look at these as, if you do this exercise looking at your codes the way they are today, then you'll miss a bunch of opportunities. So you sort of go, let's look at the end game that we want, and then do we have the political will to get the codes to a point where they support what we want to do, is essentially how it happens. The green thing is sometimes it's just marketing. I mean, we've been, like the LEAD program, I think and probably hope that it will go away at some point because it's just embedded into what we do. And many codes, are kind of at that point. took the exam and don't ever want to take a test ever again after taking that test. That hopes of the program, I think, should just become sort of what we do. That's how we operate. But again, there's a market-driven side of it. There's some of it simply PR, some of it's just simply the right thing to do. But some of it, like a low-impact development storm drain, is just easy to do. It usually doesn't cost more. Sometimes it can cost less. If you bake that in from the beginning of the process, it's just becomes a normal part of how you design.
Make sure we underground utilities.
Yes.
That's right. Having those poles taking up space on the sidewalks.
A lot of overhead utility impact in this study area. And again, that's got big dollars associated with it to try and solve that one, after the fact. But if you have a way of doing it, again, working with power companies, the providers, looking forward, it absolutely makes sense to try and deal with those, get them out of the way.
The county comp plan, to the west of this area, the study area, is all rural, all the way to the mountains. And it's an excellent plan. And so the county has already anticipated that the area we're dealing with will be high density.
Right. Good. And it goes back to the idea that maybe this is the one area that's different. The structure is kind of already there, and that it should have a different feel, look, density, just by the nature of what it is and where it is.
Right.
But you're not going to project out into any kind of a growth boundary or out into those rural areas. This is where it's going to happen,
right,
and make it the most efficient, effective.
And you have a road system that will support it.
Right. Right.
I want to add one other thing. That's, again, it's pretty high up, but as we go forward with this thing, one thing I think it could be very important is form-based zoning code.
Yes.
That would really help facilitate what we're going to come up with.
Yes, I agree. I know you guys have been talking about that for a long time, and there's all kind of arguments about what form-based is and how it works or doesn't work. But the truth is, in the real world, you have a visual image of what you'd like to be. This to be at the end of the day, which is essentially a form-based view of the world. If I walk by a building, I'm not sure I care what's happening on the third floor, whether it's a bakery or whether someone's living there. But it's that sense of form and scale and all those kinds of things. So yeah, I think that's a huge thing. The truth is, I think that's where we start visually in our heads is, and we're going to do some exercises later to talk about that. Is what should it look and feel like at the end of the day? Now, at some point, the transportation components come in and you go, okay, how do we, can we support this? But the truth is, a lot of zoning ordinances historically, if you develop to the extent the zoning would allow you to do, the transportation network could never handle.
Absolutely. I'm glad you pointed that out, because existing zoning today is not sustainable from that viewpoint.
So the other way to go is Vancouver. So Vancouver has stated policy, they will never, I'll say never, right now, they will not allow any increase in roadway capacity. They won't build new roads, they won't widen roads, no bridges, no new transportation facilities. You will walk, bike, ride a bus. They have great transit. You have to have the two together. But no increase in road capacity. That's the law. So that's what they decided. But you have to do the other part of that, which is good bike ped, good transit, and they all go together. It's like the parking issue we all have in our urban areas. You think you have a parking problem, and you want to convert parking that seems like really important parking to something else, you can do it, but you have to provide a solution somewhere else. So the two things, there's always two or three things that go together, not just one.
Yeah, I was going to say, this is pretty high level, but you're never going to get people out of their cars if it's easy to drive your car.
Right.
It's not going to happen.
That's right.
I live close to town, but it's still easy for me to drive wherever I want to go.
Right. But
And
if we provide alternative mode of transportation, that will give the people
another
option, which is efficient. I think they will keep their private vehicles at home.
Right. We have shopping centers where people, you park here and you go to Petco and you get in your car and you drive 100 yards that way to go to Target. And, well, why? Because, there's at least a perceived inconvenience to walking. There are shopping centers that will, maybe by code put a little green pedestrian area in the middle of this big parking field, and then the pigeons are the only people that use it. And why? Again, I mean, people in this room can talk about why we will or not use it as facilities or operate, act in a certain way. You can't force people to act in a certain way. But there are places that have circulator buses that it's more convenient for me to park one time and not get in my car again. But it has to be good, clean, safe, and frequent, convenient. So all those things work together. I mentioned Vancouver. If you go to Vancouver and stand on a street corner, I mean, you're not waiting 2 minutes for a bus to go by.
That's true. Yeah.
And so it works. I will take the bus because it's a really good system.
Yeah, I read somewhere that 7 minutes is like the sweet spot for headway.
Right.
But we have 60 minutes.
Yeah.
No one's going to take our bus.
Right.
I mean, we can't compete.
And shelters goes along with that too.
Right.
Weather shelters, good shelters,
exactly.
not just shelters that let the rain in.
Exactly.
And to your point about perception of walkability, again, if you're walking one end of the downtown mall to the other, you don't think twice about it.
Mm-hmm.
Walking that same distance along Seminole with Square now, you wouldn't dream of walking it. But it's the same physical distance.
Right. I take my kids to Chicago, and at the end of the day, I say, you realize you just walked 10 miles. No way. You don't perceive it because there's so much activity and there's so many destinations along the way.
It's enjoyable.
Right. This was an interesting article, and then we'll do a quick break. So this was on changing retail, and this is from ICSC publication. And it talks about today's open-air centers are bending the definition of multi-tenant retail. Large segments of space, not occupied shops, because the small shops is where we're struggling. So there's a new business development in Florida they talked about, and it has your business center, your hotel, apartments, condos, offices, the mix you would expect to have. And they're also working to attract corporate headquarters, which came up earlier. They want corporate headquarters in the middle of what were typically just these, they're shopping centers. So they want corporate headquarters in there. And it says the success of this one project came from focus on creating a destination with memorable spaces and places. If executed correctly, new and expanded projects not only open up the community to the community, they often serve as civic hubs and gathering places. So the other kinds of things we look at now are community spaces, not only outdoor, but community meeting places, police substations, all the elements that involved in a community, bringing them into a kind of a condensed area, so you get that whole experience and all the services and safety issues and everything in one place. And the idea that experiential shopping, which is sort of the thing now, it's not just the act of getting your car, going to a store, and then going home. It's what can I do while I'm there, and how enjoyable is it, and what people can I watch. I mean, Stonefield has that feel where you go and you walk around just without any agenda. And that's what I tell communities when your downtowns work, and these urban areas work,
right,
is when you'll get up in the morning and you'll go, let's just go. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know I could eat something, I could watch people, and maybe see a movie. I can do 5 or 6 things. I don't even know what I'm going to do, and there's usually something going on there. I'm just going to go.
I guess that your word adventure.
That's what it was.
Yes.
It was to create an experience where, whether it's a bike trail or a walk, or you end up exploring all this great retail or something. You left in the morning, you didn't quite know what to expect, but you came back with a great experience.
I mean, if you go to Stonefield and talk to people sitting on the bench, how many of them were there and left and never bought anything, in terms of, hard goods or anything.
We don't like that.
They probably ate something. They spend some money somewhere. But, that's the idea of this, the draw of people going just to watch people is pretty huge. And particularly in certain communities like seniors, the ability to go somewhere and sit in the park and watch people is a big deal. I mean, we like to be around other people. So.
Can we just add one more word then, say places?
Places.
To the one word. Because you mentioned that in talking. And it's kind of like destinations, but places that actually has a different connotation than just destination.
Mm-hmm. And we'll talk about that some more, because it feels like there is no opportunity within the study area that it's a gathering spot. Most mixed-use centers are trying to incorporate, even if it's just a green lawn as big as this room, where they can do outdoor movies or have some kind of a craft fair or it's a place of coming together. The other part about these developments is programming. So the ones that really work are heavily programmed. There's always something going on.
So is it
which
like
gets-
a business improvement district?
It could be that, or it could just be the, sometimes the chambers,
Okay.
got a deal in their programming events to make sure something is happening. And again, you just know that something's happening, so you just get in your car and go, and you're confident that there will be something. In downtown Raleigh, we redid a plaza there, and I will say the plaza is a functional design. I'm not sure it's, the highest end of design, but it's functional. What makes it work is the city programs the daylights out of it. And there's concerts, live stuff. There's a farmer's market on it, every Wednesday. There's a live concert every Thursday. Every weekend there's at least, 1 or 2 festivals happening.
Yeah.
So you just go. You don't have to worry about it. If the weather's good, you know something's happening. It's the idea of getting people used to coming to a place and having it be, their third place or whatever term you want to use. So it's really important that branding and design, physical form just really all come together. And right now, you've said it, this is an area that's just sort of disjointed. There's no there. There's no continuity. But it's got the potential certainly to be that. Is this a good time for a break? Just a short 10-minute break?
Before we take a break, let me mention another thing perhaps worth thinking about long-term and from a high level. You mentioned Vancouver. One of the challenges that we've got locally, and this is a political issue, is that we have a lot of NIMBYs. And it's very difficult to come up with creative ideas and try to get them implemented in that kind of an environment. Vancouver's got a nearby neighbor called Seattle. And Seattle has recently recognized that it has spent too much time focusing on these neighborhood councils that have been so strong that they have limited the ability of developers to come up with workforce housing or affordable housing. And I just think that whatever we do, we just need to keep in mind that the vision that we come up with has got to be one that can also be politically implemented.
Yes.
And we don't come up with something that's pie in the sky. I don't mean to be belaboring this point, but I just can't overestimate how important it is.
I agree. When people ask me about a community that had success, what was the most important thing? The first thing I always say is political will. And Tom Murphy was here a couple weeks ago, and he says, all the great things he did in Pittsburgh, which at the time some of that got him in hot water. And looking back, people said what a visionary he was. He said, sometimes in order to make progress, you have to step over people.
If I could just add to that, though, as the elected official of Charleston City, you have to listen. What is being said when you have the resistance from neighborhoods? And yeah, there are some that want no change. They want to close the gate, literally. I'm in Charlottesville. I don't want anybody else to come. But there are many other voices that talk about the form, the scale, the massing, the brand, who are we? And they are legitimate concerns. That I just want to say that voice must be heard. We don't want to destroy the character of this place and just say big is better, because it's not. So that's why this is a challenge. So it's listening. And not all voices that say put the brakes on are all about saying, no, not in my backyard. I've had too many conversations one-on-one with people that want change. They want to be able, they've told me, I want my son and daughter to be able to afford to live here. I want them to come back here. But I don't want something that makes me feel like I'm suddenly in a canyon when I'm in a neighborhood that has, single family and multifamily, small footprint. Mm-hmm. So how do you make those transitions, I think, is going to be key. The transitional areas are critical to getting from high intensity to moderate intensity to then connect up with those that are low intensity.
Good point.
Probably have to educate the citizens too about what actually happens when you build more dense development, that sort of thing. I don't think a lot of people have. We might take, we know that maybe, right? But not everybody does.
One of the things I always have people do is, go to the places that you like the most. Go to the cities and communities And it's interesting that sometimes those embody things that we say, well, we can't do that here. You know, so you go to a place that's dense and maybe has some height, but it's walkable, it's got great shops, you're having a great time. And then you come back and go, well, why could we not do that here? And you go, well, because it's in my backyard, I don't want to feel that way. But you go there and you enjoy it. And there's a difference between visiting somewhere and living there, but you know, think about the elements of a place, you know, that works. If you go to Italy and you're on a 4-foot sidewalk and a car comes by and almost takes your arm off and it's craziness, and you leave and go, wow, that was great. Because it's Italy. I don't want that in Charlottesville. So, you know, the context is always has an influence on how you
Isn't it interesting
view
that Rome
something.
and Paris, they don't get past 6 stories, and yet they're one of the densest cities in the world.
Right.
So, I mean, it's not just height. We get so obsessed with height here.
All right, why don't we do a 10-minute break? All right. And then, keep going.
I'm Kathy Galvin. Nice to meet you. And see you.
Frank? Good job. Yeah, our company.
Excellent.
We do operate a lot of retail across the country.
I have no idea.
Other residential developments.
I think
It is.
All right, we're going to put it back together. We can all get back in our seats.
It's like everyone's putting all of this.
Exactly.
Well, and I
Yeah, really good.
So each of you should have a sheet in front of your seat. And this is a pretty quick exercise. And this gets to prioritization and an expression of values. So on the left side, there's some general planning and design considerations, gateway development, height, mix of uses, public realm, connectivity, pedestrian safety, traffic operations, parking solutions, open space, branding. So what we'd like is just quickly to, from low to high, just sort of check a box in terms of where you think it is in terms of relative importance. So how important is gateway development, low or high? How important is connectivity, low or high? If you have another orange box that's something, a term or an issue you'd like to see, just write it down in that blank box below. You may have a different opinion or a different perception of what those terms mean, and that's okay. Just on the left-hand side, just if you want to put a note in the box at the bottom to clarify or to ask a question, feel free to do that. But just sort of a quick evaluation of how you perceive the importance of each item.
This is from what we think, saying the first condition.
Just from what you think in terms of looking forward.
Yeah.
Looking forward. Yeah. There are generally no wrong answers.
We will collect them.
You will collect them. No cheating. No Googling. Give you a couple minutes, and then we've got one more thing to do on this piece of paper. So some people are going to just put, high all the way down. So we don't want you to do that. So that will tell us something. But the boxes on the right, we quickly want you just to rank, if you had to rank from 1 to 10, relative importance for each of these ideas. The boxes on the far right, just put 1 through 10. That's a hard one.
1 being the highest priority.
Oh yeah, 1 being the highest priority, 10 being the lowest. have background music. And the second part is usually harder than the first part.
That's the ranking.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, is one the most important?
Yes. Okay. And some of you are still working.
This is hard. Who knew?
Who knew? That's why we fight over these things,
Yeah,
because they're very subjective.
yeah, and you can't overthink it, to be honest.
And you tend to want to just say everything's important, so let's make everything happen.
Well, the ranking
I
makes
could sit
you,
here and drive myself crazy.
But it is good. It gives us a check when we look back. You know, weeks from now, we look back and go, okay, we said this was really important. We said this was the most important thing. Did we change our mind or did we miss the mark? And, you know, it's possible to change your mind after going through the process. But sometimes your most honest point is at the beginning of the process, and as you work through all the realities of planning and design, you sometimes forget to look back and go, oh yeah, we said bikes were important and we haven't really done anything for bikes. How did that happen? So it's a good way to look back and check. Okay, so how many of you had gateway development as your number one? Regulated height.
Let me ask you a question. Were we supposed to, maybe I misunderstood you, were we supposed to only have 10 numbers here and not say gateway development is?
Yeah, it's a ranking of 1 to 10, so there'd only be 10 numbers.
I got
Yeah,
you.
so you can't have 10 number ones.
I got you.
Okay. We knew we had a problem student in the house and found it.
What's really more than one?
So, anybody have height as number one? Mix of uses is number one?
Yes.
We got one. Public realm streetscape character. 4. Connectivity. Okay. Pedestrian safety. Is that a 1? Traffic operations. 2. Integrated parking solutions. Public open space. 6, 7, 8, 9, 11. I'm missing one. Branding, wayfinding. Somehow I only came with 11. Okay.
I had another,
Oh, you had another. What is your other?
a sense of place.
Sense of place. That's a good one. Okay, if that were on the list, how many would have that as number one? Anybody else? Okay. Change your answer? Okay.
I put a ball head down on mine as a singular, but I'll go with Mark's.
Okay. All right, so just, to get you thinking, so it looks like, public realm and streetscape character and connectivity were very high. It looks like sense of place would have been very high. So streetscape character, connectivity, and sense of place. So 2 of those have to do with kind of the look and feel and scale of the place. And then connectivity is from a functional standpoint, how it needs to operate. And I think in Charlottesville and Albemarle County, that always rates high, the connectivity, the multimodal issues is definitely always very high on the list. Any conversation about, in the blue boxes, low to high, anything that caused you pause or you struggled over particularly in rating those? So public realm and streetscape. How many had that on the low end of the scale? All of you had that on the high end of the scale, which aligns with how you ranked it on the right side. Okay. Integrated parking solutions. What does that mean to people?
Well, is that a rank? You want us to rank it?
Just in terms of your interpretation of that term, phrase.
I thought it meant having a mixture of parking solutions. So it was structured parking, it was on street, it was tuck under, it was relegated to the rear. So it's not just a big parking lot. It was integrated in service of a bigger vision.
Yeah, I just thought of it as not big flat parking areas.
Right.
Okay. All right. We're going to collect these, and then we'll sort of tabulate and use that sort of as another benchmark. Any other conversation about that quick exercise?
You don't want our names on
All right, so now we're going to shake things up a little bit. We're going to do a little table activity. And each of you has a base map in front of you. We've got several copies of that. You have tracing paper and you have markers. So now you get to get all the frustrated designer tendencies out of you. Don't let the architects dominate your table. Don't give Chuck a marker. He's just going to write dollar signs all over it.
Maybe great. I mean, I don't know.
I'm not an architect.
Yeah, there you go.
You both are architects.
Oh boy. So,
Planning commission and council.
what we want to do is talk about connections and connectivity, and if you know anything about land planning, you know that will kind of force you into conversations about land use planning as well. But you can use a trace paper to practice, and then we want you to mark one time, either on the print or trace paper, a final exhibit. And what we want that exhibit to do is think in terms of pedestrian, bike, auto, and transit connection. And think in terms of origin and destination. So we want you to physically draw lines on where you think are the most critical connections and points of connection. Where should bike and auto be? Where pedestrian, transit, and start to draw lines. We know today it's hard to drive and walk within the study area. So what type of network would you put on top of the study area to create good connectivity? Those connections, if you need to extend outside the circle, outside of the core area, just draw a line and an arrow and say, we need to connect out to this particular point or destination as well, if it goes off the sheet or outside the circle. So the idea is you should have 4 colors, 4 lines, 4 systems, a network of 4 colors on your plan, and the color will identify the system. So essentially, let's see, we're going to go with red is your transit, and we should write that down. Let's write that down. Red is transit. Green is pedestrian. Blue is bike. And black is auto. Now, if your pedestrian and bike are always together, then just let us know if you want to use one color for both. They may or may not be always together. So, does that make sense?
You eventually want to see a document on the original.
Yes. And so you practice on the tracing paper, and then when you think you have a solution, agreement among your table, then just draw your system on top of the print.
Now, I think that what's shown on this map that ought to be the extension of Bill 55. So somebody ought to put that on top of their tracing paper.
Oh,
That's probably important to know.
You're right, you're right.
Maybe
Attach that in.
Yeah, you're right.
So we're talking about pedestrian.
Well, we have.
Are there existing trails on this map now?
Yeah, it goes here, it goes right through this building.
we don't have to worry about whether or not Hillsdale's on it. Yes.
So this is.
This is Betsy Place, which becomes Hillsdale. That's right. And
And I have trouble thinking in full colors all at once. I'm gonna just put some lines down all in black. And then we can add to that. Because probably all of those are gonna have buildings.
No, it doesn't go through the building. It goes around. Did
But
I go
I
through
just
the
feel
building?
like,
I did.
for me to start thinking in terms of this line is white, I don't think I can do that.
Going by the edge.
I need to just force
There you
one.
go.
That's a start.
Maybe one idea is
What, so, you say, the road,
there's some.
black, road color is black, right?
They've already expressed they want to turn
Maybe we use
But I think talking to somebody, actually, we would suggest maybe just going some.
Is there any reason why, you probably already know, we ever think about getting that road there?
Yeah.
We were talking about this.
Well,
I don't think you would.
I think there are roads we won't make. I don't think we're gonna use hydraulics, but maybe we would. I don't know. Most of it, yeah. I can't imagine including this part of the. I think it was a new white.
Or does it come up?
So one thing just to have it literally parking. That's ridiculous.
Yeah.
May I?
Sure.
This should come right now.
And that's where the
Conceptually,
yeah, at least from Hillsdale, I would say from at least from Hillsdale on over.
It seems to me the board is money.
It goes.
Under construction. It takes a little time.
What about,
Yes,
I think we might.
It does.
yeah.
Take it on. Yeah, the big question.
Yeah, it's got a trail.
right along.
It's a side, yeah. So it's got pedestrian.
Well, it's sidewalk, but it is.
Yeah.
What are these colors?
Well, let's
Now we have that one.
Is there no scale? There's a scale, so an inch is about 0.05
You don't think it'd be the same line?
That's a good question. What transit are there? Do we want it on Hill, transit on Hillsdale? It depends on.
It's good, it's good.
Right in here,
Transit
you
goes-
connect.
We got new BRT.
Bike thing.
Probably
Yeah.
9.
BRT is.
That's bus rapid transit. That's same, like the 4 slots are in buses.
That's there.
Really can stop.
Solid red.
Eighth of a mile, so that's about 600 feet, right? An eighth of a mile. An eighth of a mile is 600. So a quarter of a mile is 1320. An eighth of a mile is 16. 1320. So 680. So this is 680 feet. That's big. So that tells you a city block is half. Yeah. So that just shows you. And these
Yeah, they built the mountain. They built the mountain part
Just one of these are there.
Well, I would say Greenbrook.
So even if we
Commonwealth.
even if we just got you got to see the first pass, get lots of police around and then see what we can do there. I mean, those are small. I mean, a walkable block can be a but I don't think, I think right now they're starting to that really
Yeah, it makes a turn. That's going to stay. There's the high school track, there's the high school. That's Georgetown. That's pretty safe.
So, and I guess the question is, what do we think that this program I mean, one simple thing we can do is just start, you know, to put a road in along the edge, not just kind of see go.
Matter of fact, I was walking, how do we make connections over? Another issue.
I mean, you just got to start doing it. Right. It is hard.
Instead of having to do it all twice.
That shows you just how we're already. You can even go smaller.
They put a pork chop, a little island, you could take that out of the heart.
I think we should recommend that. Right now, you can't really get from district.
Yeah, you go, this is District Avenue, and then this is Cedar Hill in the city. It goes over to north. That's, I'm trying to think. I want to say that this one. Oh, that's it, okay.
Of course, then we've got access management stuff. This is just putting the web in.
I like the idea.
And those ones.
Here, I'm thinking road or bike.
That's like roughly 400 foot long.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actually climbing way out of boxes. We got a road, let's just turn this off. Put the road
We're just
down.
seeing what the scale is.
That's amazing.
You know, I keep going, we need a public space, so I'm starting there. No.
So that puts the web, that's a walkable block now.
And at the ground level.
And that's even big, yeah. And
I'm getting way ahead of ourselves.
Yeah.
That's actually the nature of it, so that allows you to.
So, and we stayed away from these
Just a
buildings.
sense of
That's
scale.
very exciting.
This building went that is a scale.
I think that's 140,000 square feet. Or maybe we just do a circle.
Pedestrian can be sidewalk, right?
And let's
Sidewalk or
see what
trail.
your idea was for, this seems to be the one where I like to
Every street has
I like
sidewalks.
to get into Stonefield.
We're trying to get them into Stonefield and
Maybe we should
down to
hold the light on it.
Well, that's the car connection, so you might want to make it screen. It's gonna have.
the green is full.
Where you coming out from,
Yeah, what's interesting is this is a ravine.
coming out from Costco. I could go down to the post office.
So we're including pedestrian.
Trying to, you can't get it all.
We'll try to figure it out.
You know, look at that, that could,
Exists.
you get a bridge or something.
Yep.
So behind the stuff like that.
Where is,
So maybe what we should do now is mark up that one. Just put the green beside or to edit out.
I don't think that's.
So this is like a big green area.
Yeah.
So maybe if these, so those go away.
It could be paths down to the greenway.
Right.
Green finger. So that's the one
Stop. Charles was thinking about this side here. Is there a sidewalk?
You could do, look at like the auto situation now that's stormwater, or those lanes can put under how much more possible. Limit ourselves to what Shannon looks like today.
Okay.
I'm just gonna put random.
So,
It is.
so should I just write down
It kind of gives you an
that
idea.
This is water.
We're kind of breaking your rules a little bit, because we're getting a different kind of. Yeah, it would be, it should be, yeah.
People will look at that and say, what is
But that could be like that. And so do we, how about connecting some of these? So to me, it would seem like.
This comes in for
This looks like.
Sure.
So to me, it's great to see. Then look at that, we created a network. Maybe this, does this need to be Green Street?
We actually have.
But it's the parallel. So you have all these neighbors. So let's go do that. Let's take this. And then this.
Yeah, that one.
Well, and then this is.
We have this shown. This is
What about transit above
You know, it's an interesting, because if you think in terms of a quarter mile.
Yeah, maybe there's.
Like yesterday.
Is there any case here where this probably?
Yeah, automated vehicles don't tax.
Even.
There is, you're right.
With some bad riders.
San Diego, they turn on all the sirens.
So there's, there's where all So we're trying to bring people here. Yeah, so I think we've done that.
Turn on all these fire alarms.
Yeah, because they gotta kind of turn around and go that way.
And the whole city's like.
Okay, so now we gotta go follow.
That's the
So, we want to keep the tightness of this grid? Just for now? Or do we want to even extend it? So, well, that's kind of like the next layer.
Oh, yeah, you know what I want to do is get a traffic number and I just need to measure traffic. That's another thing I wanted to try to determine what that is. With my location where I want now to change as a result of this.
And no question,
I guess I can back here.
come on out
Here
here.
traffic. And makes it easy. We're gonna get this done. No. No, it hasn't helped with my family situation. It's kind of taking everything offline. But no, not under.
Well,
I heard it was.
I just want to make sure you guys.
About PD and then the
These are all just, these are kind of like.
I don't know what.
Yeah, I tried it once, that's I didn't like it.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I like bread. Yeah, I can't think of their name. Her transit firm, just count on two hands how many employees in the U.S. Very top shelf thinker. It's mostly West Coast. It's usually West Coast presidents. Pure transit planners.
I think that just proves the possibility of electromagnetic.
I think that's probably a big something, and probably being part of
Okay, so do we want to now go back
international,
we need to go back now and edit it out.
That's what I was gonna say.
It doesn't go all the way today.
But it's being watched right.
Pick out, like, we know this is the bike.
We have sidewalk here. On that side. We don't have it on both sides. We do have it on one side.
I mean, all of these are gonna do.
Well, this
Okay, 5 minutes. Like a real architectural deadline.
So, I'm seeing like this. I mean, we've got like, maybe this is like the one that's. It's easy to edit out than to add. Well, these are still bigger than the blocks in the downtown. Yeah. We were looking at that. So how about like, how about look at this survey? Maybe this work is like an
You would
interior
assume that when
green
you have a sidewalk.
circuit.
There you go, there you go. Connect it, there you go.
And then one of these can be a park inside. How would this make a nice park?
That's my
Now, we're like
But
right here.
That's what it is.
maybe right
Yeah.
Yeah.
One exception. One exception. I just thought it was so funny.
We could probably have more.
Maybe.
Yeah, all these neighborhoods.
We could kind of have it like this one has like a, it's like a bite on it, has the parks and lines on it.
Or if you have a neighborhood up here, I
We could have
think
one
one
here.
here, close to these neighborhoods, absolutely.
Yeah, we're not, I don't think we're supposed to be redesigning these neighborhoods, we're
No.
focusing on this.
No, I'm just saying the neighborhoods are here, you need parks to take folks to the.
Right, right.
Access to the rear of the
Stone
post
fields
office.
and the neighborhoods here.
You know, I went back to look at that. I started to go out here and I said, no, you know what, we probably don't want to cross all the way down.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Probably
yeah.
get rid of all that.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And then, yeah, but maybe this is,
Yeah.
and it should be that, this was.
To get across.
To get across, in which case then I'm wondering.
You know, the places where we really need like
So here's the water, here's the water, so here's the water, this is the water. Right, here's the fish, this is the water.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. On it. And it's hard to see the road, maybe we need to go back under and talk it out. See how that, I'm just gonna darken it up.
Put it on there. But this does go through. Yeah. This is.
It should be shallow.
Master number one is long-haul traffic.
So, and it's like stubs out there. And is this a little road?
Here's the, here, this is a road, not a hotel, and that's a road.
So I'm not sure about
Yeah,
that.
right there. So that tells us what they're
There
for.
is a sign.
2-minute warning.
This is the road right now. And of course, yeah. So I think there was a discussion about our.
Yeah, for now, which makes sense to me. Put the focus on your.
On the 20th? Yes.
That scale is interesting.
Yes. I don't know what you're intending to do that.
Well, I was gonna draw this.
So let's see what happens.
It's an asset. It's an asset. In there, farmer's market. Yeah.
I want my giraffe. Oh, wow.
Yeah, put it
Oh,
in
that
for
really kind of works.
City of it.
I'm gonna do this.
There you go.
This.
They're the blocks.
Yeah.
That's a great.
And eventually these parking lots will be
Oh, wow.
I think those people
Yeah. But it shows definitely.
Why don't we use that as an opportunity to create public space? What I was thinking, I was just working on it. I see have more. They have public park.
That's a building.
Out there, right over there.
That's scary.
So it seems to me that
That's very.
bottlenecks is getting on. You know what they do? Yeah, it shows up.
No.
What's
How
is actually,
to
this is
resolve
demolished.
it? Is there something in this way?
There's a hotel, big high-rise hotel right over there.
I don't know.
Is that
Would this be out of the question?
Walking down.
It's back up. So just turning out of the
Really expensive.
So I think even with that's fine.
Then this is actually a public space.
You want to try and just turn everybody off the table. Maybe we'll just do that.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about, whether we create I want to be chill just to.
I would too, that's all right.
Either we get everybody walk to the table or we can.
Absolutely. Well, we can put more of those in here. These are. What about babies? They are pretty big. I'd like to get one in here.
All right, we're gonna bring it back together now. And,
Well, it's more like they've already got three.
what we want to do is get a spokesperson
This was more like.
on each table, and we'll start with you guys.
Putting marks in neighborhoods between you and me. Oh, yeah, I agree, I agree.
Coming, review now.
Okay, down, okay.
All right.
What do you put it up?
We're gonna leave it here and let everybody come and look. And then we want to just do a quick 2-minute kind of overview of your thought process. And just explain your diagram, and then we'll start with the middle table, and then we'll go to the others. Just we'll just go look around the tables. We'll just gather around the tables, and then each table we'll just pick a spokesperson and just do a quick 2-minute overview.
So we focused on existing infrastructure, planned infrastructure, and then where do we need to add connections. Of course, you've got 29 running north-south. We added in Hillsdale Drive, since we've been talking about how important that's going to be. We made it, in addition to the roadway, the bike and pedestrian there as well. In terms of, we talked about breaking this up into block size, so we put some of the existing roads on there, but also an opportunity to make connections between Route 29 and Hillsdale Extended. We also pointed out the city's plans and the existing trail that runs along Meadow Creek. And these green dotted lines are showing the importance of connecting the trail and the bike potential along these trails over to Hillsdale as well. And then you can, from there, you can get to 29. Other highlights we've got, these were just placed at approximately block distance, but we just wanted to highlight the importance of pedestrian crossings across Route 29. This T here, red of course is transit. We talked about more of a local network, local transit service along Hillsdale, more of a BRT along the spine of Route 29. The T with a circle in it, it's more of like a transit hub. Your station could be in that general area. And again, on the west side of 29, taking into account some of the county's plans, some of the existing roads, trying to break these things down into more manageable block sizes with pedestrian connections as well. The circle here, I can't remember that. I guess that's
Cedar Hill
in District Avenue. Right now, there's a pork chop there. It doesn't serve as an effective connection. If we could fix that, you could have a more effective parallel road through here, which could extend all the way up to Greenbrier. And then, of course, as Chuck pointed out at one of our first meetings, Georgetown is an important piece of this transportation network. So we've got the different colors there for transit and pedestrian as well. I think those are the main highlights. Feel free to supplement.
And then we talked about having a transit hub here, you know, so this would be some kind of a semi-transit hub to radiate the public transportation.
Yeah.
And then we linked pedestrian and bike access to trail, rather to the city's already approved trail that links McIntyre with
And these are all at-grade crossings?
Yeah, not necessarily.
Yeah, there was some we are discussing.
We're waiting for
here
technology
earlier.
to catch up.
Teleporting?
Teleporting. We thought that would probably be the
Hovercraft. Beam me up, Scott.
There is one thing to
Walk in one
consider
side, walk out the other.
with this, Kathy, that neighborhood was really up in arms when Stonefield was designed, and that workshop is in there.
I think there's neighbors. That's a good point, but I understand some of the neighbors have now love.
Now they love
to get
Yeah,
across.
it does not work.
They walk there
Great
for,
place
it's
for
a
a
destination.
roundabout.
It doesn't work, yeah, as it is now. It's actually creating problems,
Yes.
really. I hear about them all the time.
Good. Yes, it's breaking it down, trying to get as many bike and ped connections as well, some transit, different scales of transit service with a transit hub, and tying in, as we talked about, some of the green infrastructure that's there, to really make a complete network.
All right, very good.
That'll work.
We'll talk about that one.
Well,
All the road builders are really excited about this.
although I'm so short, I sit down and I can't, my chin will hit this table. The thing we did is we went to the scale. And when we looked at the scale, we realized that that 0.05 mile is like 2 city blocks long. So we were trying to really get down to a walkable block size, and these are about 400 by 400 or 400 by 600 or whatever. And that was just to get us to understand just how far away we are from a walkable block network.
Mm-hmm.
And when we did that, what popped out is that you could have kind of multiple connections that are of different scales. And you could have multiple parks of different scales woven into the network. And when you get the parks in there, then you wind up seeing you kind of create almost like 2 neighborhoods, not just one big blanket one. And connecting to our neighborhoods was really critical for both the county and the city. And then making sure there was connections to the bigger natural systems, like the Greenway. We didn't put the red overlay in. We were focusing on just getting the network down, and then we put blue and green for bike and ped. But as you can see, then we started realizing the potential to really connect up with Stonefield. And even they've already got a block network in play, and this was hooking up to that. These represent crossings. We're not opposed to bridges over the 29, and these are bridges over the wetlands.
And we just point out that this is water.
Yeah.
You can see the fish.
But it's also could be a multi-use bike trail. But I think the main, and then this greenway is like another, like this represented a street that could be really pedestrian focused. We know this is a very big road. It's going to feel like a parkway. But to have this network surrounding it of a real walkable, this could really feel like a downtown mall. So that it's kind of integrating both scales. Is there anything else to add?
You envision this as very urban if you're creating.
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely.
And, our philosophy was it's easier to take away than to add. And you start with what we know is the walkable block scale. And then you kind of figure out, and they're still big. I mean, that's really still 4 city blocks.
Are you suggesting that form would be different than the west side, or you would apply it to the west side, given some of that network?
To this one here?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're seeing that this block already is in keeping with the scale.
Mm-hmm.
Stonefield already has.
So, and these are getting kind of big. That would probably be the biggest scale block size, I think, that we would say would make sense there. If you want to really keep it walkable, because that's already, that's a 0.1 of a mile. That's already over 1,000 feet. That's too big. Usually, you get over 600 feet, people stop walking. So it really does need to get, and what I can imagine is that VDOT will not like all this intrusion. So these blocks might need to get bigger, right?
The ones that
on the edge, the edge along 29, get those blocks bigger, but the ones internal could be really tight.
Good.
Thank you, team.
Thank you.
It was nice having the owner of Stonefield. We can do that.
All right.
It's good having the scale.
Yeah.
Who's the spokesperson?
One of the other leaders, they were the brain.
Spokesperson here. That's yours.
I would say that we looked at this network as what is there now and what is likely to be there for the next 30 or 40 or 50 years. And the challenge I think we've got, and I think, Kathy, what you all came up with is very attractive, but if you draw a 30-mile concentric circle around downtown Charlottesville, you're going to come up with 175,000 people dripping wet. And it's all we can do to support the downtown mall. And my sense is that Stonefield and Barracks Road as two sort of urban-style developments. Barracks Road obviously is doing tremendously well. Stonefield, I assume, is doing okay based on the sales price, but I'm sure it could maybe do a little bit better. I'm not sure that there is a market in my foreseeable future for another downtown mall out in this area. And I think that as we were drawing these pictures, I was thinking about how what is there now is likely to be there for a while, but how do we come up with interconnection? If Sperry, for instance, ends up moving, but we got to find some place in this community for Sperry to move. We don't want them, the 700 jobs to go anywhere. But as I said earlier, the master plan for Stonefield, and I'm sure Mark had a lot to do with that, was designed in such a way that when Sperry goes away, there's an integrated road network that will tie all that together and also tie it into Seminole Square, which is where I understand the main entry to Stonefield would be, Seminole Court, I'm sorry, in the event that Sperry does go away. We like what Hillsdale's doing. It brings transit, it brings bikes, it brings pedestrian, and it brings automobiles. With unfortunately a 25-mile-an-hour speed limit that we prefer to see at 15 miles per hour. Maybe we can accomplish that with some speed bumps, but it's a real challenge to what we're going to do in this area. That's all I can say. The one thing that I hadn't thought about, and I'm glad to hear you all say that at Cedar Hill that pork chop's not working, because that certainly is a way to get more integration with the neighborhood, the Meadows neighborhood, and it would be very nice to have a road out there. I don't know if there's anything else that we really talked about that was significant.
You hit most of it. We tried to, given the nature of what's there now and what's going to be there, we said there definitely needs to be more pedestrian-friendly crossings here at Raleigh 29, and the same for extending some of the trails, which I know other groups did. So we were trying to make interconnections where I think are most possible and feasible.
Very good.
I just want to say, there's just something that Chuck brought up. We were intending this to have a lot of residential in it. We weren't just creating a retail district.
Exactly.
This was a lot of people living there too. It wasn't just retail. Just want to make sure, because that can't all build out for retail. You can't sustain it. But jobs, innovation space, maker space, look a little bit like McIntyre Plaza, this different feel, but a lot of people live in there.
What's the feeling in terms of how realistic it is to go under or over 29 to get east to west?
Expensive.
Pedestrian standpoint or vehicular or all?
Pedestrian.
Pedestrian.
Realistic, do you mean expensive?
Yeah, I mean, who's going to build it? Yeah.
If you put it on paper, is there the will to make something like that happen? Is there money to make it happen?
If it's part of a smart scale application.
Also, for engineers, the answer is nothing there money won't fix.
Right.
But
There may be possibilities to tie it into specific transportation improvements as well.
Like a BRT line.
And my first question is, even with the increased population and activity, is it enough to support if you have the money to build it? I've seen so many built where the population is just not there, the activity's not there, that it's just not used. That would be my.
That could be worse if it's empty.
That's the other thing, is there's been a lot of money spent on pedestrian, overhead pedestrians that they're being used by squirrels more than people.
Yeah.
That's right.
Because of the walking distances and the mentality of the user shopper to walk that distance to go from services and goods to services and goods one side or the other. It's tough. There's a lot of $2 million bridges that don't see a lot of people on.
Now, I do think you have some, if it's tied to something, I'm thinking of the one in Roanoke or others where if it's tied to a transit system,
Yes.
then and you're already at a higher elevation, you're not walking up, walking over, walking down, you start to create it. But to me, just to build one over there, even with increased population, it's just not going to be enough to support it.
Is the traffic at this intersection more or less than Raleigh? More. This is more.
That's my understanding.
Is that right? You know?
Carl, is
Say that again.
Since it's more from a numbers.
It is.
Yeah, by far.
So why would by far more? If you built it over past there, why wouldn't?
Pedestrian.
We're talking about
Pedestrian overpass.
Pedestrians?
You're
talking about grade separation?
Assumptions, would they be doing that?
There is no assumption.
Well, if you had less traffic at Raleigh Road and 29, you assume you're going to have it here too, right? At least for a vehicle.
Vito, have you ever heard the word politics? I like that idea of a transit center. I don't know whether it would work or not, but it sure is a creative idea. One of the things of an overview, it seems to me that the traffic counts that we last had on hydraulic are as much as they're ever going to be. Again, you've got Wegmans that's pulling a lot of people from the south that used to come up this way. Hillsdale is going to take 12 to 15,000 cars a day off that intersection. And I think we need to be looking, from my perspective, we need to be looking as though that's not going to be a grade separation. Although if it ends up being that's the right thing to do, then that's the right thing to do. But if that traffic count gets down to 35 or 40,000 vehicles per day, what does that do in terms of VDOT's desire to push traffic north-south, as well as our desire to push east-west on hydraulic, which is the main feeder for the Seminole Square side, the Kroger side, the Whole Foods side. But if you look at this road network, once Hillsdale that's on here gets extended up to Raleigh, everybody that lives east of Route 29 is now going to be able to access all the businesses that are east of 29 without having to get on 29, just like the people living west of 29 with Berkmar Extended are able to access all the businesses on the west side of 29 without getting onto 29. I think there's some good ideas here.
What I'm sort of hearing is, where are people coming from and where are they going to? Is sort of what you're saying to
Well, I think Stonefield is a destination. I think Seminole Square, to a certain extent, is a destination. Certainly, Whole Foods is a destination. And I think people are going to continue to come to those places. And I think the one thing we need, and I can't remember, I guess I was telling Lou Hatter earlier, we got to make it attractive for people from Greene County to come down here and to frequent our areas. We got to make it attractive for people living west and east of these areas to be able to have access. If 25 or 30 years ago someone would have envisioned what has happened east of town and south of town, I would have said that they really were pipe drainage. But we have dispersed our population over the last 20 years. Maybe this is something that planners could see that those of us that were trying to invest money couldn't see. But we really have a diverse population now, north, south, east, or west. That's very unusual for towns. Most towns grow to the north and to the west. But we're different here. So I guess my point is that I'm not sure that the hydraulic 29 interchange is going to get any worse than what it is now. I think it's going to get better. And I think that that's the thing we ought to be looking at that drives our decision-making process on how a small area plan is.
You're talking to my two masters again.
Yeah.
I was just curious
We've
as to
got a sense of
what
place.
Mark and Dave had to say about it.
Yeah, I think you're right as far as it being a transportation solution, but we also have this sense of place we've got to create here.
Yeah.
And I think Kathy's on target when she's talking about we've got to build more residential into this. It can't just
support it. To support it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
It's not going to work as a commercial business district.
One observation is, of course, this is a major leg of that larger thing, and all of your drawings don't really deal with those 7-2 exit interchanges. So you guys have all focused in around hydraulic and 29. You haven't dealt that much in your drawings or your connections that much with Hillsdale and 29, or Hillsdale and bypass, and Emmett Street. Just an observation.
Well, we weren't told to do that.
It's an interesting thing with your study area. Cutting off right there, and those being the two major intersections as part of this puzzle.
Right. Well, we know there will be transportation inputs from those areas that will have to be looked at. From a land use standpoint, we've just had to sort of corral it somewhere, stop drawing, but I agree, it's important we'll have to look at.
It's a good point. You can't address all this without addressing
Yes,
that.
absolutely.
Yeah.
We have a couple of VDOT folks here. I'm just curious as to your all's reaction.
To these alternatives?
In the discussion about the traffic and road.
I think there's a lot of validity into the uncertainty of traffic patterns in the future. And one of the things that if we ignore, it will be our mistake is the impact of millennials and how, they are coming back to urban areas. They're staying in urban areas longer. So if this is a destination now, and certainly will be a destination in the future, I think planning for that is appropriate, and I think the residential aspect in a walkable community is important. I think we're seeing Hillsdale is going to be a little bit like John Moore Parkway. It will bleed some traffic off of 29. The question is how much increase in traffic will backfill what is bled off of 29 by Hillsdale. So eventually will happen. We're thinking it's 12 to 16,000 vehicles per day. That's about what Hillsdale can accommodate. It's great that that gets pulled off of 29, opens up capacity, but certainly it'll come back. Chuck made a really good point about north, south, east, and west. I've seen it over the past 5 years. There are more people that did not fare the economic downturn well in those areas and came to Charlottesville for work. And now they're commuting in. The commute from the west has grown dramatically. So those people are coming in on 64, they're coming in on 250, the 250 bypass, and they're all getting to the interchange there. Some of them want to go up 29 north to wherever they're working on 29, some of them downtown, and similarly from all different directions. So the success of Charlottesville during the economic downturn led to some issues with congestion.
And absolutely, where they're coming from and where they're going to.
That's
what I was questioning. Yeah, exactly. Interesting.
I'd love to add something, Sally. I guess you're kind of the chair. My name is Paul Brideau, and you'll be hearing more from me in future months. I'm going to come in after more of this is solidified and help figure out transportation solutions to respond to the land use concept. And I have this thought right now that what you said is right on. It's going to be really hard to predict in 2035 or 2045 how people will travel. People will want to travel, but how they travel, whether it's transit or autonomous vehicles or bike ped, used to, in the 70s and 80s, we would just take the existing traffic counts and we would grow them by 1% a year. No. So first, as in the last 5 minutes, I've been thinking we ought to think about doing scenario planning for the transportation element. Like, if people tend to live this way and travel this way, then this is our answer. But if they tend to operate that way, let's do that. So we have kind of a menu. That what's probably impossible for anyone in this room to do is say, I'll tell you exactly how people will travel and what mode they'll use in 40 years.
Or even less than that.
I know.
It's not just
You can count on two hands, I think. Things are
A lot of
going
the
to
millennial population, there's a growing number of people who refuse to own a car.
Absolutely.
They have made a decision in their life that they're not going to own a car. They're going to live in an urban area. They're going to walk to work.
Or don't even have driver's
ride a bike.
That's right.
And so, just like Paul said, how many people are going to do that? Nobody knows.
Right. But they're going to go to the areas that will support that lifestyle.
And then I just want to add that we're seeing in the Rose Hill, Harris Street area in Preston, growing innovation sector. People are buying up buildings, packing them with kind of starter businesses as well as more mature businesses are growing and leaving and getting bigger spaces, and they need more. And they need more living spaces for their employees. Right now, they are commuting, and they don't like it, and they're going to lose their staff. So that was kind of also going on in the way we were patterning our scheme. It's a little bit like a Rose Hill pattern, which is a type block network, but have residential above everything, have residential in between everything, where you really are letting live, work, play happen at the same time. And it's gotta get walkable. I mean, that's all we're hearing all the time.
Can your scenarios account for two different ideas that would relate to 3,000 people living in this area versus 10,000 people living in this area? Can you understand what that kinetic would be?
Yes, but we got to think about how many variables do we have in play at one time, or we'll have 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 times 2 different scenarios. So we as many variables as we can turn to constants and leave just a handful of things as variables, then we'll be better off, or we'll just go crazy. I'm curious if anybody has this thought that I've had. I've struggled with the idea of mixed use, like residential over employment or nearby or something, because then I keep hearing about millennials that are going to have 10 jobs in their life. They acquire a home, whether they buy it or not. They acquire a home, and then they work. They can see it. If they look out their window, they can see their work. And then they change jobs in 4 years or 2 years. Well, and then people tend to bond more with their home because of school and church or whatever.
I think increasingly people are going to be working from home.
I know, that's also
but what we're hearing too from, again, it's a growth sector, is that they can't attract people because of that very reason. We don't have enough breadth and depth of our employment choice. They want to stay in this place, but they won't come because there's only one job like it. If there's about 5 different jobs that are like the one I want, I will come here because I may not like it after a year.
Yeah, so they turn left on foot.
Yeah, and they will stay in the same place, but they won't come to the place if they feel like this is the only game in town.
That helps me get through that dilemma.
Yeah.
And keep in mind, to some degree, while we're talking about this area, Albemarle County is right there looking at that Rio area as well right now for placemaking, this same sort of jobs activity.
All right, so we let that one run along because I think it was a good conversation. So I think it was really good, and we're going to take those because we're going to have to copy your ideas.
And Places 29 had an uptown.
Yes, absolutely.
I mean, that's
So
kind
that's
of
what
that's what you're.
That's what we're looking at. Yeah.
So
right now, so
what we're going to do now,
just in case,
we're going to give you another exercise so you don't
We
get
can just leave
sleepy.
ours on trays, right?
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah,
That's
it's
fine.
not working.
We got 10 minutes.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is give you some dots, and we're going to do this visual preference. So what we want to do is go to each board, and this is going to tie into a lot of the conversation we've had now. You're going to get 4 dots, 3 green dots on each board. Just put your 3 most preferred images, which should align with what your vision is for this area. And then there's one red dot, and that's just your least favorite, that's your stop button.
3 per board,
3 per board.
3 green,
Yes.
and then
And one red.
Okay,
Yes, per board. So you go to each board, put 3 green dots, what you like, and 1 red for your least favorite or your stop button. We don't want to do that. That's it. Does that make sense?
Each person has.
Each person has 4 dots, 3 green and 1 red. So per board.
Per board.
Yeah.
Per board. So 12 people will go up and put 3 green dots and a red dot on every board. And yes, some are big and some are small. We ran out of colors.
So you put 3 green dots on a board of your favorite.
Of your favorite image and 1 red.
1 red on each board.
And then you're going to do that 6 times.
Red is not.
If you really like one, you can double up.
Yes.
If you really like one, you can double up.
You can double up, triple up. All right. Let's see how fast and orderly we can do this. This is like a 3rd grade fire drill. And we want to see all your dots, so you can overlap a little, but don't put them right on top of each other.
I knew that.
Yeah, I mean, if we get in trouble, I can combine these. The challenge is we can leave that off.
Oh my God.
No.
Oh, that's what I'm the note cards for the media. Okay. So instead of us having to write them I got a couple of things we can combine.
Tiny little dots where they
I'm
show.
glad we got the bigger one. Yeah, it even means bigger dots or smaller fingers. Yeah, no.
Send photos.
Yeah, they smart random. I don't.
So what is common? Which one's better, this or this? This
They're the
or
same.
No?
That's wrong.
Because the dots disappear.
So just go behind it, let's just take them right.
That's probably what the. high-end architects. But aren't those spikes or something? I don't know, they're just very style.
Close your eyes and see it.
Good. This is always the fun. Yeah. I feel like we're getting all the fun.
This one is good. I guess
I'm not sure if I'm standing all day or sitting in the car. I've never saying.
Yeah.
It's funny how many votes per day I always get. Holly doesn't. I'll give you it's a nice newer rooms with the media in the middle, movie theater.
Next choice.
It's just like Westbrook. How is it on? How these been done? Shop retailers and it's not very rooftops in the, they have to have off the network.
Get on
This one
Yeah. In some places have to set some rights to get subsidized.
How are you? Are you providing the Are you doing?
He's out in 6 months. It's a great deal. They turn it. What else is there? We're Harbor. Really
People don't like this.
Yeah, Granby's almost gone through its cycle again too.
What a change. And it made it. Closed down, you know, open the mall back down. Really good restaurant.
This for here, but that was like a shopping center. But it's a lot. Another example. In my urban redevelopment, it's under. He put a spot there specifically because of the water tax.
That's another good thing. Yep.
And he hopes to expand taxing. So, because there's no other funding option.
Even in Athens, they have little water taxis to get to the restaurants. They're just too far. You can walk, they're not too far from people. They're not visible. But now it's kind of, I can get there without walking in, it's kind of far. So I just get, it's like a 60-second ride across the water. But this businesses with family.
Our folks are involved here. I think.
Yeah, it's
That's pretty good.
And it's not residential neighborhood by any considered industrial neighborhood. I was impressed with the town, the number of millennials going on the car down there.
In Midtown. Oh, yeah.
It's unbelievable.
Just my daughter. Live in Maryland, working in D.C.
Yeah. Well, they celebrate. It's a big, it's a car. Yeah. Kind of cool.
Because my daughter, she can go out and party. It's called.
Yeah.
Which I knew.
I'm two, I'm with Connor.
Yeah, you're with some.
Yes. You know, you're going to expect.
The company.
Where's your home?
I'm going to New York.
Instead of renting a car. So do you come down here for your music?
We're coming for these meetings with John and myself. Trying to alternate some of the mountains come down and some up.
Streetscaping and an incredible market in downtown. I mean, totally transformed this into a place that people say, I just want to go live there, or I want to go retire there. It's a destination because the downtown just works so well together. But the big idea of transforming that downtown, utilizing a natural feature they had as the beginning point, again, is an idea that someone probably got laughed at when they first brought it up, but they made it reality, and it gets back to politics, political will, how do we make those things happen? Because they always seem like they're undoable, they always seem too expensive, and there's too many property owners to deal with, it's just too hard. But that's how these things happen. I mentioned the Philadelphia shipyard story, and that one's not even over because Urban Outfitter has landed there, and now they have to figure out, because it's detached from downtown a little bit, it's out where the stadiums are, now they're talking about transit and how to get residential in the development, because now it is a destination place, but they have that problem of connectivity and no housing, but they've got 1,000 acres to work with. So, those are just the kind of things we're talking about. So, some of that we've touched on, but this is your time to say, okay, here's my big idea for the hydraulic small area. What would that be? Just throw them out there and we'll write them down. Medium ideas?
I thought we were talking about big ideas all day.
So, bigger ideas.
Bigger ideas.
So let's just say, pedestrian over bridges, pedestrian bridges, pedestrian tunnels.
So
that's
I'm
big.
David Mitchell. I'm from Great Eastern. Chuck had to go to the meeting. One of the things that, I don't know if this is a big idea or not, or however you want to put it, but the partnership, the private partnership that people talk about, it can be accomplished lots of different ways. And I think one of the big ideas is to create an investment area where tax abatement for investments above existing values for improvements. And then the cities or the counties or both, not just VDOT's road infrastructure, but Kathy's talking about a park. There are things that cities can do, communities can do to encourage more than just from the economic side. I mean, you need to do the economic side, but there needs to be an investment of actual capital by the city themselves, not just a tax increment financing or something along those lines.
That's what I was going to say, too.
Yeah, that's what I mean. And so, yeah, if there could be I guess the big idea is an area set up that is specific to this geographical area, and that it could all work together. I mean, that's how you're going to get change. You've got a bunch of different property owners. The only way you're going to get a property owner to change the use is to make his existing use not performing as well as it could.
Right.
That's it. I mean, we're going to sit on it until there's a better use for it. And that can happen over time, as just happens, or the communities can incentivize that change.
Okay, good.
I mean, just more walkable blocks. I mean, that seems to be a big idea, because we don't think in terms of blocks anymore. We just think in terms of parcels. But when your parcel is 1,000 square feet, so what is the size of the area? How many acres do we have?
600 plus.
We have 600 acres. And right now, it's basically just 3 big blocks. So just more walkable blocks.
Okay.
My big idea is the housing. I think people will generate a lot of these ideas. They'll create the demand.
Okay. So what about a big community space?
Absolutely.
As a core feature element.
I think that's great. It needs to be fed off of or part of a space that's already there. To ask it to be taken out of an existing commercial base is going to be a tough
Is there a space there
Unless
today?
the city wants to buy it.
Right.
Well, the park, I mean, the Meadow Creek, that completely redone stream that's no longer just a glorified ditch. And, you know, it's kind of central to the location. It's certainly not ever going to get built on, so you utilize it for what it can be used, which is a park, some infrastructure. Sure.
So you could connect natural systems to more formal public spaces.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, you can have fingers pointing up so
Yeah.
that it draws people to this main feature that we've got. I mean, you should utilize it.
But in a more kind of an urban setting, those parks need to feel enclosed. They need to have a definition to them.
Mm-hmm.
They can't just be a public plaza in the middle of a parking lot. It's got to be buildings around it, and that's what all these pictures are showing. So enclosed public space.
Okay. Other big ideas? What about off of the main line circulator bus trolley, something that would help move people around, given that it's so challenging to get across 29?
Well, we were all excited about that transit center.
The transit center, I think
That's
that's a
right,
big
that's
idea.
what you're getting.
Yeah, that's a big idea.
That's
I mean,
a big idea.
you know, if you had a dedicated trolley that just went from the 4 quadrants, and people didn't have to walk.
Yes,
And it held like 20 or
yes.
30 feet. And it just,
Stonefield.
it's all it did. I mean, you call it whatever you want to call this area, label that on the trolley, it markets it, you know, it's a place, you
trolley.
create a place
Right.
for people. And then you solve this issue of crossing these major transportation, you know, corridors. I heard the tunnel thing, I kept my mouth shut because I'm not at this table. Now I'll say it. That tunnel's too long, nobody's going in it. I mean,
Right.
what's the width of that right away? Several hundred feet? That's tough.
That's connected to the idea of parking once.
Yeah, right, exactly. I mean, you park in one spot and you rotate around. And that's where, you know, another infrastructure thing that the city could put in is a parking structure that served all 4 quadrants. And then you had this trolley system so that you could get around.
To just piggyback on the trolley, though, while I think the trolley's a great idea that just circulates, I would not want that in place of, I would want it in addition to transit.
Transit,
No,
yes.
This thing is.
Just to make sure we're all.
But, yeah, but you've
it's
got
not
it.
yeah.
I mean, that's a great way to connect those
Yes,
4 quadrants.
I agree.
And I think that's where the transit hub would come in as well. We've got to make this the central station, if you will.
It's
where
one
these
stop.
different systems tie together. It's going to create its own vibrancy. You look at Northern Virginia, for example, and the communities there that have developed on those metro stops. Like light rail is probably a ways down, but in the meantime, BRT have all of these different transit connections have one central hub.
That's
I think
right.
that's going to be. That could be a really
So
neat
you
place.
need both.
Yep,
Yes,
agreed. Okay. Cap down on big ideas?
I don't know how to articulate this, but the one big idea could be basically a collection of really small ideas. I don't know how you say that. It's like a swarm of bees, you know. So I think the experiences need to be fine-grained and multiple and variant.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if we get 4 answers, you know, the Stonefield quadrant and the Seminole quadrant and the Hillsdale quadrant,
Right.
it's going to kind of end up being like an office park.
Right.
But if it had a texture, so it's actually not necessarily big, huge ideas, it just need to be a unifying theme.
Well, for me, when I hear that, it ties back to the idea of branding the place. Maybe it's a unique, distinct district from in terms of how taxes and development are viewed, the way it is viewed from a urban form. It feels like it's its own place. It's a destination. It's got a feel, a form. It works from a financial side. It's a little different, contiguous. Like you say, all of it goes together to say this is something different, and it is interconnected in a way that makes it operate like one thing.
If I had to time the market for 4 big market conditions, I would hold my cards until that market condition went right, and then I would put all my chips in. And I would hire one designer or planner to articulate that vision.
Right.
But there is maybe the possibility that there are multiple smaller steps that lead to that larger vision that would have, get me out of the job. I'm an architect, it'd be fun to draw up, one of these quadrants, but it'd be better if there were 200 architects working in this area. The vision,
Right,
not singular.
You have the master that's kind of helping to create the vision, but then when you get down to building it, that's where a good form-based code comes in, that'll let multiple people design and build it, and then you get that authenticity.
Right.
I mean, authenticity is going to be key for this. It can't look fake.
Okay. Is a standalone code or overlay for this area, is that a big idea?
I think
Treat
so.
this- yes.
I would think so.
Okay. All right, well, let's move on from that. Again, we can come back if you have something pops into your head.
I think the employment thing was important.
Yes.
The jobs.
Yes,
Yeah.
jobs.
The depth and the breadth of jobs.
I mean, you all know the Bean in Chicago. I mean, a piece of public art, can transform an area. It's incredible that people travel a long way to go see
But
that
it can
thing.
also inflate land values to the point where it's not affordable to live
Well, yeah,
there.
that's true.
So, I mean, that's the balance, right? Is keeping affordability at the same time. That's a big idea.
Yeah.
How can we do this and keep it still a diverse community? That's a
the
huge, we
challenge.
cracked that nut.
That's a challenge.
If I'm not mistaken, all of Millennium Park is built on top of a parking garage that's on top of a rail yard.
Yeah, I don't know if all of it, certainly a big chunk of it is, yes.
So it was open railway until somebody screwed up the air rights, and they were able to, the city got their hands on it, and they built over top of, still an active rail yard.
That's nice.
With the parking garage in the park.
And the use they get out of that is unbelievable. I mean, it has so many different impacts that they didn't even see when they built it that have come out of it now. Pretty amazing. All right, so just to capture, this is quick challenges and really inherent advantages. So of all that we've talked about in terms of what we'd like to do and like to see, what are our biggest challenges to getting there?
I think there has to be a political will.
Political will.
And I think in this case, two political wills.
Yes.
This is a city-county partnership. That you really can't do one of these without the other.
But at the same time, then, there's got to be the capacity and capability to implement.
Okay.
So political will is one thing, policy, but we've got to make sure that our respective governments have the capacity and capability to implement.
I think it's a challenge to, because of the existing conditions that are currently developed income-producing properties. So, it's not a green field.
Right.
This isn't a market that we expect to. The market already exists and is active, and so any changes we'll have to consider that.
So every time we draw the grid pattern this table drew, it goes right through people's property and buildings and stuff. There's, you have to take into account that that line just became a bulldozer, and how do you make those kind of things happen?
Right.
The challenge is when you don't have one owner controlling a project.
Right.
We deal with this master planning all the time. How do you herd all the owners to get together and say, Jim, I know the value you think your property has, but if you'll do this and put a park on it, boy, you'll make everything better for everybody else. Those are hard conversations to have.
And those challenges or conversations also need to happen with the communities around,
Yes,
the neighborhoods
absolutely.
around,
Yes, good
and
point.
getting the neighbors
Absolutely.
and the communities around to understand that,
Right.
in fact, this could be better.
Right. So a lot of times we will all draw the same end picture and go, yes, we all want that. And then you back up and go, well, how do we get there? And then you go, oh, okay, this is hard. And that's really,
It takes patience. You can't have this number of owners, and I mean, within shopping centers, somebody owns a quarter acre here, a half acre there. You're going to have a hard time getting all those cats herded in the same direction.
Right.
So, the challenge is you're going to have patience, and you're going to have, I've said this before in meetings, trust of the landowners and the developers, not to screw it up.
Right.
But you've got the cities and the communities need to have patience, they need to have trust, and they need to, in order to have that trust, you've got to have a little bit of hands-off, and that's where the form-based code is very helpful. That's a leap of faith in a lot of ways.
Right.
You know, I mean, you're saying, well, I know what the building's going to be, but then, well, what's going in the building? And what's the traffic generation of that? Because there's huge differences in traffic generation based on office versus retail versus, and if you're not, I mean, that's the challenge, I guess, is that release of control to a certain extent, to let the market fill. You build this framework, but you've got to let go of it.
And it doesn't have to be perfect. So there's a lot of dots on, I think this is Burkdale, north of Charlotte, and this one may be the same one here. They're really cool mixed-use developments. You can tell the architecture's all the same. They're really clean. It looks like something out of a Duane movie. They don't work from a retail perspective. So it goes back to that same thing. The housing tends to work, but there's parts of it that don't work at all. It's beautiful. It wins awards. You walk away, and then it's like. But they had a greenfield they were able to work with, build it all at one time, and and then they're done. Then they walk away. This is more challenging because of all the existing buildings, businesses, infrastructure. You have to decide what are the opportunities there for real change, and what are things we just have to work around.
But in a way, that's the opportunity and the strength. If you can view it that way, it can be
more organic.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm trying to get at. Thank you, Kathy, for the word.
Right.
And which really enhances the end product.
Right. And again, go to the cities and the places you like the most. The architecture is not all the same. You have tall buildings, short buildings. You have old buildings, new buildings, and you go, wow, this is interesting. Then you go home and you go, I want everything to look the same. No, that's not the way we feel when we're in those environments.
I think, authenticity is going to be the big challenge, because there's a reason. I don't know if I'm the only millennial in the room.
You are.
And I think that the reason that people move to Bushwick in Brooklyn is because it feels authentic. It's been there for a long time. They don't care that it doesn't all look the same, but it functions. You've got, people walking.
Right.
That's going to be really difficult here. And as a person that we're talking about where millennials are moving, I was a planner and I dislike very much new urbanism development. So I'm just going to throw that out there. But that's going to be tough to put in this spot. But I think it's important.
Right.
So I just have a curiosity. Is new urbanism the problem because all the architecture was the same? Or is it because it also can be called walkable urbanism?
Yeah, I mean, speaking as a developer, it's kind of tough to say this. I was talking to Kurt about it, but one person owns all the land from the start. I don't know how, in some of these places that we like, maybe they did at one point. I don't know. But it'd be really hard to make a place feel authentic.
So it's more the property ownership structure and having one person call all the shots.
Well, sometimes that works. I guess Paris, one person called all the shots. He didn't own all the land. But so I don't know. So I don't know. I'm going to end up talking myself out.
I think one of the things that is, I mean, I know we're having challenges here, but one of the things that can be a positive is the fact that there's multiple landowners.
Yeah.
We compete with him. We want to do better than him.
Yeah.
We compete with Stonefield. We want to do better than them. But that's also, I'm going to say it again, that goes back to allowing us to compete with each other instead of trying to shove us all in the same box.
So I want to get to the challenges again, and I'm trying to figure out, because these are gray field sites. These aren't greenfield sites. They're already got stuff on them. And I want to get a better sense of how do public-private partnerships work? How do governments assist with preparing land for developing? I know that typically are redevelopment authorities. Ours isn't quite working that way. How do you do that? How do you prepare gray field sites for reimagining and rebuilding? And what's the role that government plays? So it's a question as much as a challenge.
that's the conundrum, and there's several ways to approach it. But one way you've seen is if you have planning policy documents, small area plans that are adopted into your code, that say some part of your comp plan. So now the small area plan says this area is intended to look and function like this. And there's usually combinations, always public and private together. But in many places, what happens is a lead private development entity comes in and says, okay, we're on board, we like the end result, we think it's good for everyone, it'll be good for my business. And they take the initiative to find a way to get control, work with other property owners, whether they acquire land or work with the other owners, and see the end game.
So master developer.
And they become sort of the master developer. It's not the whole thing, but pieces of it. Because the public sector is not set up to herd cats and make all that work. Now there are times when you have to be willing and able to spend the money on the infrastructure to set the table. Right. The developers just can't be, hamstrung with all of this. I've got a developer in North Carolina right now. It's got $4 million worth of off-site road improvements to do a fairly simple grocery-anchored retail center. And they're just, they've been at the walkaway point 100 times, and everybody wants to get the deal done. But you can't hang it all on the developer feedback. So, I guess there's 100 ways to skin that cat, but some of it is agree on the vision, and the private sector often will find a way to make that happen. And they're better at it, they're more nimble at figuring out, how to do it.
I think also if you can get one to do it, the rest will follow.
It definitely happens.
A little bit of a copycat business. But to get that first person to step out there and take that risk and put all that money out, you've got to incentivize them to do that.
But you need that end vision.
Because otherwise,
the reality is
the bank will just own the property.
Right. And the reality is, that your value is going to be better at the end of the day once you can implement the whole thing. The challenge in mixed-use development, particularly in greenfield mixed-use, is mixed-use development works when it's all there. So if tomorrow all of that could show up, it's great. The problem is it doesn't show up all at once. So now the retail's there, but they're hurting for the residential. The residential's there, but I don't have the retail I can walk to. Really wish I had the hotel. They're not ready yet. If it was when it's all there, it's perfect. But there's a period of time where you have to work toward that. So, even like at Stonefield, it's challenging to come and get all that stuff on the ground so that you do have the, some feeling of authenticity, and you have the synergy that works and makes it all work. But it doesn't all show up at one time. These are really hard things to do. Mixed-use development is really hard to do. There's not a lot of developers that know how to do it or want to do it. They know product types, but they don't know all the product types. And every mixed-use development has to struggle with parking, because parking for residential is different than for office, which is different than, and so that's the reality of sort of urban living, which is what we're trying to create.
Just to get back again to the challenges, we're talking about public-private partnerships. One of the challenges is that we do certainly have a group of folks in the public arena that hear public-private partnerships and run screaming down the street.
Yes.
Because they're terrified of the idea. They have just seen the failures roll out in the papers,
right.
And I get that, but that's a challenge.
And it's kind of like the TIF thing. There are communities that use TIF every day, and that's how they get things done. There are other communities, like in North Carolina, they don't know how to use a TIF. They've done 3 or 4, and they've all been bad. If you get to read, I may have referenced this article, Rebuilding Neighborhood Retail. It's not all just about retail, but it's a ULI publication. It's got some really, I think, applicable ideas in there. It talks about the need for public-private partnerships, and all the success stories most of them talk about. At some level, there is that partnership that's required. A lot of times it's the private sector stepping up and taking the lead, but it's never just one or the other. And it kind of always sort of comes back to political will too. You just got to be ready to jump in the game. I mean, the developers, used to be the black hat people, and now they come in and go, they really want to do good stuff. They really want to do stuff that's of value and increases value. But a lot of times we don't have a system in place that allows them to do, the level of creativity and things we want them to do. So it's a back and forth, it's cooperative. The big idea thing I think is important, because if we don't look at it that way, you just sort of say, how do we dress up what we have? And again, the developers, if that's all they got, they'll move in, they'll do what they can, take the money and go do another one. But if you put it in front of them and say, how do we get the big idea? We really want the big idea, how do we do it? Then the development community can talk from a market standpoint and say, okay, we could achieve it, but here's the things that would have to happen. And here's all the players that have to be involved, and here's the things we would need to set the table. And everybody's got to be willing to do that. Otherwise, you just go back and do what you've always been doing.
I know I was in the peanut gallery, but I thought of two challenges, and I wanted to put them for the committee to consider. And one goes to the comment that this lady here just had, that about educating the people not in this room about the issues that we're talking about. We're probably going to agree on a lot of things when this is over, and each be sure that we pick the right thing. But the investment community or the political community may not. So I think education or lack of education would be a challenge. I don't mean K-12, I mean education about all these subtle details. The second thing is, and we'll have to frame it as a challenge, and that is this whole initiative needs a champion. And the champion could be a person, or it could be a group, but it has to span multiple city council elections, board, state secretaries of transportation, governors, a champion. Usually it's a person, but it doesn't have to be. But that will last for years to keep because the background noise will distract all of us to other things in future years. So if you accept that as some challenges,
I totally agree.
Lack of champion would probably be the way to word it, if there's a lack.
In the bigger cities, you could go through Atlanta. At one time, it was Ted Turner. In Chattanooga, it was the Coca-Cola people. In Pittsburgh, it was the mayor who was just crazy enough to do the crazy thing. You can always point to.
Well, I might throw out the elephant in the room, though, and Diane will talk about agree or perhaps or not. But our form of government in Virginia is unique. There is no strong mayor. There is no strong chair.
Right.
It is a corporate body of leadership with a city manager or a county executive. And the executive function is not elected, but they're in charge of implementation. The elected body is in charge of policy and vision, but we can be turned over every 2 years, 4 years. So it's a challenging thing to get that consistent driver to push through a vision when they're not even given the tools to implement.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Can the development be driven by a third-party community development corporation or something like it that both jurisdictions
That would be,
support?
in my view, ideal, that it was a redevelopment entity that championed this stuff.
Because the truth is that the independent cities and the counties and the way we're set up that way also adds to that.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that.
Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
Yeah.
So that
So you
would
have that
transcend the
mix.
politics
Yeah,
of the jurisdictions.
Okay, inherent advantages, and we've talked about a couple. Any we haven't talked about you can think of? And you've got jobs, you've got people, you've got trips driving by on the road every day.
It's location, location,
Location, location.
There is underutilized space.
Yeah, 100 acres of it, yeah.
Sal, it seems to me, I happen to agree with it, that this is a critical location with the road system close in. And what we're proposing, what I hear I very much agree with, if this site were a mile north, I don't think we would want to see it as dense.
Everybody agree with that?
No, I mean, if you see the network that could sustain bus rapid transit
We're
over
looking at
time,
that right now for
then you got dense nodes all the way up 29. Yeah.
So, and the other thing is funny, so, in the old days, you pulled out a planning book and there was this concentric model of growth, right? Which doesn't really happen.
It doesn't happen.
It kind of does this, and then someone over here is doing that, and then they grow together, and we're trying to figure out what that form looks like when they go together. But the reality is they do this and this, and downtown becomes midtown, and then it just becomes town.
Right.
So, and some of that can be good and intentional if you have good transit connections and those kind of things. So nodal development is interesting because what we want, I think we all have a similar idea of how a node should function. This is kind of probably bigger than what a node might be defined as, but we know we want all the stuff we need in a functioning community to happen and to be connected. That's sort of what we want. But the growth tends to do this and jump and then reconnect.
And Albemarle County right now is having discussions about nodal development right now around Rio and right on up to 29th. Yeah.
So it's interesting. I mean, you look at what the different dynamic is 1 mile up the road than here.
Right.
You know, they may not be that different in just terms of the difference might be where they are in the evolution of development.
One of the challenges I think that is often missed is we don't have that big a population.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we're a tenth the size of the Richmond metropolitan area. Think about that. And a lot of these things that we want, we need to recognize what's financially possible and what's not. I mean, there are certain things that we just, from an economic standpoint, can't support. I don't know that people in this community like to either admit it or understand that this is not a metropolis. And there are things. That's all.
So and it's a good point.
But again, we're looking at long-term vision here.
Right.
Which really makes a difference.
So if you drew the ultimate vision of put your block size down and fill all those blocks with stuff and build it out in this whole area, you know, if you did a market feasibility study, that would be way more than the demand would ever show for the area.
And that goes back to patience.
Yeah.
It's not overnight.
Yeah. But again, you have the vision and you work toward it.
Right.
And what happens is if the vision's good, you work toward it, and what you're building works even before you get to the ultimate event, or if you never get to the ultimate event, as long as it holds together while you're approaching that.
Thoughtful and deliberate rather than haphazard.
Right.
And I think historically, both city and county have not wanted sprawl.
Exactly.
We want to keep that rural area. And that's why we are talking about nodal development that's more intensively developed without compromising quality of life, but that can then facilitate creation of a really good transit system.
Right.
So there's a bigger picture here. And one of the strengths of this region is the fact that in 15 minutes you are in beautiful rural America, which is very rare now in this country.
I call it wine country.
But the challenge is to support with the right infrastructure and planning and deliberate actions that development area so that you're not chasing people out of the development area into the rural area because of quality of life issues.
Because they can't
and
afford
that's
housing.
something we've not done well on right now. And that
So-
we're trying to change that dynamic.
And to that point, again, everything's a bigger system network.
Right.
So to ask a developer come in and say, fix this here, it still doesn't work without other parts of the system being addressed beyond even the scope of this area.
Right.
So it's always, you know, whether you're talking parking or whether you're talking the small area plan, everything's part of a bigger network, and it never all works together without looking at all those other pieces that physically may be outside of the study area, you know, to your point.
Right.
Because people are always moving in and out of the system on the network. But everything's interconnected. Okay. So how do we measure success? So after all of this, this is just sort of a fun, quick exercise. We're going to give you a note card. And the idea is pick a window of time, say 20 years from now, 25 years from now. The small area plan has developed to a certain extent, and you are now a reporter and you're writing your headline. How does that headline read relative to what you would consider a successful hydraulic small area? So you start basically the phrase, you know, the development or the implementation of the hydraulic small area plan. What? You fill in the blank in terms of a headline that says this project was successful at the end of the day. How would that headline read? So if you were to do set the bar really low, you would say hydraulic area is not as bad as it used to be. Okay, that's a pretty low bar. Higher bar, you could say hydraulic area voted the most livable mixed-use development in North America.
I like that.
Yeah, can we copy that?
Yeah, I know.
Or you might start at hydraulic road has become a model for fill in the blank.
Yeah.
So what would that headline read that says, yeah, we did it right, we did a good job?
We will collect these too. So no cheating.
And this should, again, just give you sort of a measure of what is a priority and what does a vision statement look like for this project. So I like this photo just because it says something local. It says something about someone who tied to the community, thought enough about the community to do something playful and fun. And that's, if you're doing things right, Charlottesville, Albemarle County, you have a unique identity. And the people that live in this part of the world, they love it here.
What's missing there is Albemarle.
Yeah, I hate to put it up just because of that, but I thought it spoke to the idea that is someone's measure of success, that a local business felt enough to do that. All right, so we're going to collect these. We have 15 minutes left, two more things to do. Want to give just an example. So anybody who wants to share what they wrote down? Alex.
Hydraulic 29 planning area is now a destination for everyone.
That's a good one. That's a destination for everyone. Like it.
The same idea, but his is shorter, so it would fit on a newspaper.
Okay. We don't write headlines anymore. We just text and tweet and do things like that.
Mine's way too long.
Yeah, mine is.
Okay.
The wrong.
The architects had the long ones?
Yeah, we should have just drawn a picture.
Well, we had the most blogs. We had the most integrated ideas.
Well, go ahead. Take a shot.
Well, hydraulic Hillsdale area has become a model for sustainable, walkable, equitable, and authentic redevelopment on what once was a single-use car-centric shopping center on 100 acres of asphalt.
Okay.
That's shorter than that.
There you go.
That's why newspapers are going under.
Yeah.
No, mine's a blog.
All right.
I used, there's this phrase in here that is kind of ironic in a way. Hydraulic road area nationwide model for suburban renewal.
Okay.
Kind of play off of urban renewal, which was sort of a bad connotation.
Yeah.
But
Okay. That's a good one.
I said delivers on hydraulic area plan delivers on promise of cooperative city-county placemaking to create cross-border walkable destination.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Now that's in a political science class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But again, 20 years from now, you'd love to read that headline and go, you know what, we worked together, we were collaborative, we found a way to, even through the challenges of political structure, we made it work.
What did you say?
It said, the vision of the hydraulic small area 20 years later is vibrant and alive, offering a healthy, active lifestyle with convenient transportation to education, work, food, and living for all.
Good.
Wow, that's great.
So we just have to roll the clock forward.
All right. So with those in front of you and everything we've said, and because everything you just read had a couple of key elements of what you might bake into a vision vision statement. I mean, you can almost read some of those and just say, that's a vision statement. So that's why I like that exercise. If now you backed up and said, okay, let's put a vision statement down today, what we want to accomplish, it feels like it would embody a lot of what we just heard. So maybe what we do is, well, let's just say, from what you've heard, is there anything missing that you think needs to be a fundamental element of a vision statement? So we've heard walkable, and we've heard, safe, and we've heard,
Authentic.
financially, viable and green. And so somehow you cobble that together in a vision statement and say, okay, what are the 3 or 4 most important things that said, okay, this is what's guiding our development. So thoughts on what those 3 or 4 elements should be.
Collaboration between stakeholders.
So maybe it's the political will and collaboration.
Collaboration's
It seems like maybe it's something to do with healthy, fair, and authentic. And the fair is equitable, but it's accurate.
I'd like to see, in terms of equity, I'd like to see something for everyone, maybe all. Because one of the issues we're having in the city right now, it's the city is becoming very diverse. And there is a growing concern that, for instance, what we are doing in West Main Street, in terms of planning, the development of West Main Street, it's for a particular population group.
Right.
So whatever we do here is going to be something for all.
Yeah. Inclusive. Is that the word then? It's inclusive.
Sustainable is a term that's thrown around a lot, and it's lost some meaning, but I think having a positive environmental benefit.
Can I put that with healthy?
Sure.
Healthy for people and planet.
sort of resilient. Resiliency, maybe, or resilient. Is that a word that's maybe not as co-opted?
Yeah, I mean, it's used a little differently.
Yeah. It's usually like people about to be submerged by.
Yeah, that's the way we're using it these days.
Yeah.
But you have to address the transportation, like accessibility or something.
Multimodal, walkable.
I just want to put an aside, before we mentioned the environmental aspects. When you redevelop an existing urban area, you will be required to improve the stormwater of that property. That's just state law. So, you get the benefit, by encouraging these redevelopments, you're not just getting the benefit of a better place. I mean, by law, you're going to be required to improve that stormwater situation.
Redevelopment is such a positive thing from an environmental standpoint. It limits the sprawl.
I mean, in a lot of ways, it helps these cities meet their requirements, because they had, if they were stuck where they were Danville, Virginia, nobody had redeveloped they got to spend an exorbitant amount of money fixing existing infrastructure and building new ponds and things. Whereas if you redevelop, you can go a long way through the private sector to meet your requirements as a city.
Right. I mean, in a highly developed area like this, you might even wind up with more pervious than you started with at the end of the day.
Right. How about something to do with identity, distinctiveness?
Yeah.
Branding, destination, identity.
I was thinking more of, it's a little abstract, but along the lines of an untold story, because part of the fun of it is the people who will come here with this, they build this story of this place over time. We're not going to come up with the end of the story on day one.
Identity with its own narrative, something like that.
which to a little bit made it difficult with the dots over on the side, because I found myself just kind of being attracted to things that I personally like. In different situations, I could almost see different parts of those images being appropriate at different parts of the property. It was hard to, because I didn't know what the story necessarily was when we did that exercise.
So, when you do this, is interesting because these are places, real places that most people are very attracted to. Some of this is a result of very intentional branding. Branding will happen whether you want it to happen or not. It will become what it is, and it may not be a good thing. So, hydraulic area, may have a brand today. If you go outside and ask 10 people what they think of it, well, we did that exercise at the beginning. And then some things are the unintended consequences of, good planning. So, this is in Denver, where there's this beautiful downtown street and it has all these great restaurants on it. And they took advantage of that and says, you know what, we're going to string lights over it, and once a month we're going to shut down the street. People have to go online and make a reservation at their favorite restaurant on the street. And then they do a white tablecloth and shine a dinner in the middle of the street. And it's amazing, except for the one time they had a hailstorm and then glass went everywhere. It was kind of a mess. But it's, that's the kind of stuff that you go in and you put a bunch of those little moments together, and then it becomes something really unique. Most of these places have a brand. And, Lodo in Denver or the Gulch. Look at the Gulch in Nashville. I mean, it was a train wreck. It was just an industrial area. And it has been redeveloped, and now it's the place to be. All the millennials want to be there. The redevelopment in that is amazing. And just a few years ago, it was nothing. I mean, it was just a place you didn't go to. But it was an intentional branding of that area, and now it's hot. It's the next hot.
You're hitting upon this has no great old urban fabric. This has no great old factories or warehouses. And so creating authentic buildings new is really challenging.
And as to your point, that's tough, but it can be done.
It can be done, and that's going to be really important. Well, who are we today?
Yeah. So you have to have a conversation about architecture, but the form and mass and structure. Cherry Creek in Denver is a really cool place. It has high-end retail, national retailers, but it's set up like a residential block. And you walk around a residential block structure, but there's great stores, great shopping, great restaurants. It's really, really neat. But they're all new buildings, so
part of the challenge. It's expensive to build those things. Mm-hmm. That is expensive architecture, and that goes into the cost of the housing and the cost of the living. I mean, I'm not advocating building ugly boxes. I'm just saying if you want things that look like that have that texture, that have those, step backs, and everything's not, it's not the most efficient building in the world, let's call it, right? Because the most efficient building in the world is a square. Those things cost money, and the consequence of that is you do fight against your goal of having affordability.
Right.
And, the way that you can balance that is through density, is through height, and is through a partnership with the community, through financing or whatever. I mean, it's great to want these things, but these things cost money, and you have to find a way to tamp that expense down.
All true. Other thoughts?
You mentioned walkable. That's obviously something we have all flagged here today. It should probably be up there.
As its own thing, right? Not just multimodal, it's walkable.
Yeah.
If you design for walkability, you inherently get multimodal.
That's good. It's vibrancy, or something that it's sort of covered by things like healthy and walkable, but the idea that it's just going to be pulsing. There's going to be
activated.
Yeah. So ULI has a whole thing about vibrant centers, and it's kind of like all this stuff goes together to make it work.
But again, we're not necessarily looking at this as like short fun. This is not like a retail destination.
Right.
It's a real authentic place for people to live too.
Right.
Yeah.
We can't lose
It's not a
track of
tourist
that.
destination. And that's one thing that is a bit of a challenge for the downtown mall.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I
we're-
think this location, unlike the down, well, maybe, it's surrounded by a lot of residential. That can feed into, people don't need to.
It could be a real
Absolutely.
neighborhood center.
Yeah. And to your point, I mean, if you redevelop in kind of the ways that you kind of like here, that core area, you know, it may be pricey, but the advantages of all that residential around you, you have an opportunity to have a better mix of income levels that can feed, as long as it's connected into it.
Absolutely.
And then people
If you
can
let
know they
us,
can walk.
we will cut our own threads and build too much, and prices will drop. I mean, we will. We have a bad habit of doing that.
We've hit the residential, but we really haven't hit the work side here.
The employment side.
The desirable place for business.
Yes.
And again, that's where we can grow the more local
Yep.
entrepreneurs, the more local restaurateurs.
I read an article one time about back to authenticity and the ability to attract artists, and it tracked the ability to buy spray paint within walking distance if you're downtown. And, if you had to go to Home Depot to get a can of spray paint, it wasn't really authentic downtown.
So a
art
good
scene.
hardware store.
Well, it's just
with an art supply.
There's a little deviance involved in
Sherwin-Williams is right up the street.
Art supply / hardware store.
Well, if you look at Richard Florida's matrix of what goes into these, you know, desirable places to live, it's really interesting the kind of things he puts in there. And it's everything from music to, you know,
But he also
diverse
says it's
population.
mid-rise usually, it's not high-rise.
Yes.
I think we also left out our desire to incorporate a park or some sort of public space.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
was just about to put that on. I mean, whether you want to call that part of placemaking or whatever, but, so Robert Marvin was this great landscape architect who was involved with Hilton Head and Harbor Town and some of the coastal developments way back when. And he used to say, every project needs an ocean. It may be a real ocean or not a real ocean, but you have to create, you know, what is that one thing that pulls a project together, and it's definitely lacking in the area right now.
Green space, park.
Yeah, what are we, maybe it's Kathy, what are we considering a low-rise, mid-rise, high-rise? What's the number?
Well, I think what I've heard is, and that might be good to get some definitions, but I've heard mid-rise is like up to about maybe 8 stories. Beyond that's the high-rise. Low-rise is up to 4 stories.
Is this room comfortable with sort of an
Right.
8-story type of feel
But
to
we're,
this?
you know, in Charlottesville, I think we're talking people don't like, they get really uncomfortable past 6.
Yeah, I was gonna
Yeah,
say.
I don't think economically you're gonna get, we're not past 6 yet.
No, I mean, it's a
Once you get
range.
past
These
the
are
building,
ranges.
can't be served by a ladder truck.
Right.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, we've got that.
Well, the developer will buy you a new ladder truck.
That's right, sure.
6 is not comfortable in the context of 2-story.
But 6 is not comfortable when it's across the street from a 1.5-story bungalow. And that's where the transitions come in.
Right.
Transitions in the, we must code with transitions in mind.
So I think we also have to keep in mind the grade of the area. So,
Yes.
for example, our building is 7 stories, but relative to 29.
That's what I mean by
it's only
transition, right.
4 stories above.
So gradients and transitions.
Floor-to-floor heights matter. I mean, your hotel's probably 9 feet floor. Where an office building or retail residential might be 12 to 14, just, you know.
We're going to do a really quick video that a couple people are familiar with. It's really, really interesting relative to this conversation, autonomous vehicles. I think it's just 3 minutes long, maybe.
Yeah.
And then we're pretty much ready to put a wrap on this.
Let me just find it real quick. Joel, what's the name on that? It's written on my sheet.
Just in terms of next steps.
Sweden. Well, what's the second word?
Drive Sweden.
Oh, Drive Sweden, thank you.
We have a target date for public meeting, open public meeting of April 26th, which actually is not that far away.
No, it's not.
And that would be the first public meeting where we, basically it's an input meeting. We're not taking designs or proposed plans in. So that's on the calendar. We'll start putting notifications out for that pretty soon.
Okay. So hopefully the volume will work here. I'm not hearing it.
There you go.
Lou, any ideas?
It started, we just barely heard it.
I think you just need to turn it up.
I've got it all the way up.
Try the computer down.
Yeah, the computer volume.
Yeah, it is. All the way up.
Computer line.
Right in the corner.
Down the corner.
Down the bottom, click on the icons.
There you go.
I was hoping it would come through the speakers. Let's see if this works.
To 11.
Our city has grown up pretty much like all the other cities, and it constantly changes. We become more people, the city grows, we build houses, more roads, and parking lots, more vehicles. But human beings also need space. So what would happen if we drive away the cars of today and start using autonomous cars instead? Autonomous cars don't need any signs, and autonomous cars need less space, enabling wider sidewalks. It creates more space for us humans. And autonomous cars can drive and park themselves somewhere else. Look at this commuter station. You will be picked up as soon as you leave the train, because autonomous cars know when you arrive. So this reduces waiting times, less pressure, less stress, and autonomous cars will take you all the way home. Check out these autonomous trucks. They're driving close to each other because they automatically line up into road trains. This saves loads of energy for transport, and that is good for all of us. And since the autonomous vehicles communicate their arrival times with their destination, the loading and unloading can go so much smoother. And when the trucks don't have to stand and wait, can use their parking lots for other things. Look at the front of the shopping mall. It's just a lot of parking lots. We would not need all of them anymore. We could do something funny. It could be a park instead, with an outdoor swimming pool and a cinema. This is a place to live in. So with autonomous cars, more space is created around the needs of people. Cities become nicer and more beautiful. Streets become safer, travel smoother, less noisy, more space for life. Well, it will be better.
Really
Nice.
interesting.
I saw this last week. We were at the Virginia Transportation Construction Alliance Conference in Hampton Roads. And John Martin, some of you have seen him speak before, played that video, and I thought it was a pretty good demonstration of tying land use planning, transportation, and future technology together. So after what's been a great discussion here today, if you kind of keep this concept in the back of your mind that we don't know where technology is going. I can tell you at VDOT right now, we are working here at the Research Council and at VDOT across the Commonwealth toward autonomous vehicles and preparing our roads for autonomous vehicles. So keeping an open mind with regard to parking, with regard to what we view as congestion, as we move forward through this process, I think would be great. Are you guys done?
I think we're done. Anything else you haven't covered?
Would it be possible to have like at some point, a presentation at a council meeting, and maybe even the Board of Supervisors,
Yeah.
have a summary of what's going on, but actually show that film too?
That'd be great.
You know, that might really, just to piggyback on that, that might be a really great agenda item for our
Sunday.
next
Yes.
joint meeting.
Yes.
That would save you guys, and we're scheduling one right now for September.
Yeah.
Joint.
So, City Council, Albemarle County, yeah,
Great.
joint meeting.
And that would be a good
That'd be a
check-in.
great agenda item.
So one last closing thing. I know a lot of people are probably wondering what we're doing, where we're going with regard to a facilitator.
Yes.
We are working on that. We will have a facilitator. That facilitator will not be a VDOT employee, will not be a MPO, county, city employee. We want that arm's length, that accountability, that outside perspective. We already have a list of candidate names. We're going to continue to add to that, and then we're going to shorten that down, shortlist it, start speaking to some of these people. I'm not going to promise that by the next meeting we'll have a facilitator, but I'm hopeful that we will. But regardless, we are working on it, and our next meeting is on the 27th in the afternoon from 2 to 4. So that'll be a topic that we'll discuss then and bring you up to speed on where we're at.
That's April 27th.
April
April 27th. So
The
thank you,
day
everyone.
after our meeting.
Yeah, thank you, everyone, for investing 4 hours today. I hope you enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah.
Glad everybody
Thanks
could
a
come.
lot.
This was great.
This was well done.
This was
Thank
really
you.
good. Thank you. Very good.